Welcome back, Webtoon fam. Zaiden on deck. Let's kick off our epic pulse-pounding saga. I want to get better, so I'm waiting for your comments under the video. Not long ago, Lee Ken-bok was just an ordinary 28-year-old loser, but now everything changed faster than patches in online games. He awakened incredible abilities and became a true king of streaming, no worse than Mr. Beast, and now every evening crowds gather to watch how he tears monsters into pieces. Because of this, the gaming streamer earns insane money and bathes in fame, although before that his life looked like real hell. After birth, he learned to feel spirits and the aura of other people, but the moment he used the skill, his body twisted as if electricity was running through it. Only his beloved shaman grandmother knew how to deal with it. She advised him not to use the skill and live a normal life, although this fool never listened. One day the pain almost paralyzed him, just like Harry Potter fans who heard a reboot was coming. But everything was actually serious because right next to Ken, a terrible accident happened. On the floor lay a prayer book he had made with his own hands to give to his mom and dad. Today they never returned home because a drunk driver fell asleep behind the wheel and crashed into them at full speed. Because of all this stress, Ken fell asleep and found himself on a green meadow where he heard the voices of his mom and dad. Ken tried to run after his parents, but a massive divine hand stopped him. Some unknown guy offered him to cross to the other side and promised to fulfill any wish, and the trembling hero automatically agreed. He hoped his parents would return, but it turned out to be a scam that only made his life worse. Now he cannot break the laws of heaven, although honestly he does not even know what that means. From that day his power only kept growing, but the backlash from using the skill became much worse. When he turned 28, he got a job in a paper sales company, the dream job, selling paper to people who sign everything in PDF anyway. Ken hated this job but had to charm fat businessmen and pretend their ridiculous stories were interesting. Negotiations constantly turned into a nightmare because the guy was always insecure. He started stuttering, stumbling over words, and could say some nonsense that ruined everything. But today was too important, and he could not mess it up. Everything was heading toward signing the contract, but the skill suddenly activated again. Ken felt a strange aura, and the divine hand delivered a dark warning. Most likely this contract would bankrupt his company, which meant he had to step back immediately. Ken calmly said goodbye to the businessman and said he urgently had to leave. Of course, a storm of insults followed because salesmen are not supposed to behave like that. His bad luck doubled when the backlash from the skill hit and blood started pouring from his nose. Of course, the guy could not tell his boss the truth because they would think he was insane. When he returned to the company office, he started mumbling, saying nonsense, and eventually got fired. Now the 28-year-old loser who lost his job went to drink some beer with his friend to fall into depression as quickly as possible. By the way, I almost forgot to mention the friend of our hero, the editor Choi Ben-hun, who had also recently been scammed by a streamer and left without work. Ben was never a great editor and honestly not the best friend either, but at least he always stayed nearby. Now they desperately needed a job, and Ben suggested teaming up, creating a channel, and starting to stream in order to get rich. Ken had no other option, so he decided to escape into virtual reality, where everything might be easier. Thanks to the capsule, full immersion becomes possible, and during the game the backlash from the skill might disappear. It might not work, but it is still better than stealing grandma's pension just to buy food. Ben immediately explained the rules and said the game requires brains, not physical strength. Even disabled players can become top streamers, so the friends have every chance to succeed. After drinking some beer, the main hero immediately began dreaming about a beautiful life and quickly agreed. The next morning they went to a computer club and found a suitable capsule. Ben gave no guarantees his friend would survive, although he promised to stay nearby. Honestly, this guy is far too unreliable to trust, but dreams of a bright future clouded the mind of the main hero. He entered virtual reality and felt power spreading through every cell of his body. After a deep breath, synchronization finished and he had to use the skill, hoping no pain would appear. Ben kept worrying about his friend, or more precisely about his own future. When the test started, the results exceeded every expectation. The guy who always feared showing his skill opened up like a bird in the sky. He released all resistance and showed his full power, moving like a butterfly and stinging like a bee. His lightness and speed reached a completely different level, and he barely noticed how he reached the finish line, just like Usain Bolt. People run that fast either when they are Olympic athletes or when they forgot to turn off the iron. He managed to reach third place in the ranking, and the system even called him a professional runner. All of this means the editor's instinct worked, and now streaming platforms will gain a new genius. If here he can use his power without pain, his life might finally change. To prove it was not just luck, Ken decided to run the test again, but this time with traps. Now traps would appear on the path, and that seriously makes the challenge harder. Our hero was way too tired of drowning at the bottom of the food chain, so he risked it like a total maniac. He fully relied on his inner instincts and unleashed everything he had. The more Ken used his divine skill, the easier it became. The pain disappeared, and for the first time Ken felt like he could use his power without consequences. In just 1 minute he reached the finish line and completed the test mission. The moment he returned to reality, he immediately heard the screams of his friend who was already mentally counting the millions they would earn together. But that is classic friendship when you watch The Wolf of Wall Street and suddenly believe you will become millionaires tomorrow. The motivation usually lasts exactly until the first utility bill arrives. While Ben jumped around in excitement, the main hero feared the backlash from his skill. He waited for blood from the nose or losing consciousness, but nothing happened. Now he knew for sure that he could use his power and not drop dead a minute later. From this moment, a new chapter in his life officially begins, and he wants to start his first stream as soon as possible. After the first test, the friends went home so the next day they could create their channel. Now all thoughts of the main hero were tied to virtual reality because only there he truly felt free. But the walk home was not as simple as it seems. The divine hand warned about danger again, and a dark aura appeared out of nowhere. A little girl slipped and flew down a long staircase. She was lucky Ken was nearby and reacted in time. He caught the child right in front of everyone and earned a storm of applause like he had just won the NBA Finals. People called him a hero while at the same time he felt savage pain. His whole body locked up, his insides twisted as if being ripped apart, and his bones felt like they were breaking themselves. This terrible pain will stay with him until the very end, which means he has to prepare for it. To raise endurance and stop fearing pain, Grandma advised him to train. Remembering old school advice, Ken went to train. He wanted to work out peacefully, but the annoying Ben, as always, showed up at the worst time. Before, this guy only slept until noon, but now dreams of wealth completely messed with his head. On top of that, the video of saving the child appeared online, and now Ken became a star. People called him Superman and even urged him to start streaming. For the first time in many years, the main hero received support from people, and once long ago in school he had already felt something similar. He wants to feel that joy and excitement again, and for that he needs a team. Ken puts everything on the line to make one last attempt at reaching success. Already the next day, the friends found money, took some debts, and bought a virtual reality capsule. Now, if their channel does not gain popularity, the creditors will not give them a normal life. Ben had already chosen the first game and promised it would be as intense as possible. Lots of blood and deaths guaranteed. The game is called Biocrisis, or BARS, a name that already hints the developers hate the players. This masterpiece is famous for its difficulty and its zombie apocalypse world. Ken entered virtual reality and woke up in a dark hospital. A nasty smell of blood immediately hit his nose, like a reminder that here every mistake costs a life. The first viewers joined the stream and the chat instantly came alive. People always enjoy watching newcomers, especially when they run into failure. While Ken was figuring out the game settings, a terrible aura appeared nearby. There was no weapon at hand, so this fool grabbed a large hanger. Hard to say how that will help against zombies, but whatever works. Walking into the corridor, he prepared for battle and heard gunshots. Two rotten green zombies had just lost their brains. They were shot by a young police officer who happened to be nearby. He ordered Ken to run immediately before the other monsters gathered from the noise. Instead of listening to the advice, our hero grabbed the hanger and activated berserk mode. He rushed straight into the crowd of zombies without a single doubt. Ken understood one thing: if you want viewers, you have to do crazy stuff. Ben calmly ate cookies and knew that in games like this, everything really begins only after the first death. Ken personally destroyed 6 zombies and then activated John Wick mode. During this mode, the main hero grabs a pen and starts finishing off wounded enemies with it. One zombie sneaked right behind him and almost bit him. This time the hanger worked and crushed the monster's skull. A few more kills and the chat exploded with hype. The hidden quest to save the policeman and eliminate the zombies was completed, and thanks to that the number of viewers doubled. People could not understand how a beginner was playing like a god. The police officer thanked his savior, handed over the access card to the storage in the basement, and even gifted a pistol. Either the guy had completely lost his mind or this game was way too easy, because cops usually do not hand out guns to the first random dude like promo codes. People suddenly started losing consciousness and turning into zombies, and the officer himself got bitten during the fight, which means his days are numbered. Very soon he will turn into a horrifying monster who would choose juicy brains for dinner over a tasty steak. Right now there is more sanity inside this man's head than inside the head of the president of Iran. He realized there was no escaping death and asked for a quick release from his suffering. All the girls in chat got emotional while the guys grabbed popcorn to watch brains fly everywhere. Ken did not hesitate for long, because in front of him stood just another character whose story had already reached its final chapter. While he moved downstairs, the first donation dropped from chat. 5,001 is obviously not millions of dollars, but every legend starts somewhere. People in chat slowly got used to the new streamer and even started calling him funny. To increase subscribers, you need to make clips from the stream and create a viral video. If everything works out, the video will explode with millions of views and new subscribers are guaranteed. Ben had done this many times before but never received such a powerful response. Just minutes after uploading the first video, the comment section was already exploding with hype. Viewers had never seen such a talented rookie and rushed to join the stream. Ken himself had no idea that the stream was already blowing up. One of the very first viewers offered 1,001 for completing a challenge. Wealthy viewers love paying money to force streamers into crazy missions. Ben had already warned that this should never be taken lightly. Rich trolls often lure rookies into traps just to have fun. Most of the time they give impossible tasks and the streamer crashes hard. But nobody knew that our main hero possessed divine power. He decided it would be stupid to refuse easy money, and accepted the challenge. Now he must reach the storage room in the basement without taking any damage. That would not be easy because the place is crawling with zombies everywhere. Ken prepared the pistol and slowly moved forward. Just a few steps were enough to attract hungry undead creatures. They surrounded him from every direction, and chat instantly came alive because viewers during streams love two things: victories and someone else dying. Everyone started placing bets on how long it would take before the rookie gets destroyed, and almost nobody believed he could pull it off. Ken, on the other hand, stayed ice cold and ruthlessly blasted the zombies. Within seconds, he wiped out the first wave of monsters without even breaking a sweat. That was the exact moment when real money started flowing. Viewers tired of boring streams opened their wallets and started dropping generous donations. While Ben counted the money, danger slowly approached his friend. The cracking of glass forced him to tense up because zombie dogs were rushing in right now. Those puppies are not something you joke around with because things end very badly. Judging by Ken's eyes, even he did not expect this twist. To avoid becoming an easy snack, he jumped up and blasted the hounds from long range. The whole scene looked stylish and cinematic, straight out of the best traditions of Paramount Pictures. Now he could keep moving and finally descend into the basement. The moment Ken reached the storage room, he automatically received 1,000,000 won. In a single mission, he earned an entire month's salary from his previous job. Now it became obvious that streaming is far more promising than selling paper. Although fans of The Office would probably disagree. With the green police card, Ken unlocked the storage door. He relaxed for a moment, thinking he was finally safe, but disappointment was waiting inside. A dark aura appeared again in the corridor, and his heart almost jumped out of his chest. He tried to stay quiet, but even breathing was enough to attract the monster's attention. The game system detected a swarm of zombies, and this situation looked worse than the newest Fast and Furious movie. The good news is the monster cannot see and only reacts to sound. Extreme caution is required because in a tight corridor, fighting such a giant is almost impossible. First, Ken distracted the creature and then used his agility and speed. By the time the monster realized it was being tricked, it was already too late. Ken reached the end of the corridor and locked the door, leaving the zombie starving behind. By that moment, the ammunition had already run out, which means it was time to search for new weapons. A storage room must contain something interesting, otherwise this is the dumbest mission ever designed. After looking around, the hero found a locked locker. Inside there was a police uniform, a brand new pistol, and plenty of ammunition. He decided to change his image a little, and the girls in chat absolutely loved it. His athletic body matched the police uniform perfectly, and now he no longer smelled like a dead dog. Now Ken received a new mission: defeat the swarm of zombies. If he does not use firearms, he will receive an extra reward of 1.5 million won. Ken had not even made his decision yet when the storage doors were smashed open by a massive monster. Now every move had to be fast and precise, otherwise it was straight game over. If firearms are forbidden, then the only option left is a baton. If he actually manages to defeat this gigantic creature with a simple rubber stick, then honestly nothing more impressive will ever appear in this game. The monster instantly rushed forward, attacking with its huge arms and writhing tentacles. Ken chose a defensive tactic and for several seconds did not even think about attacking. He blocked the strikes and waited for the perfect opening to launch a counterattack. The moment he saw the enemy's weakness, he jumped forward without hesitation or doubt. The strike landed perfectly, and green blood started pouring from the monster. Then Ken pushed hard from the ground and hung in the air like a straight-up superhero. On top of the monster sits one main face that must be destroyed. The moment the divine power gave its hint, the main hero delivered a precise blow. Thick blood splashed everywhere, and the rotten smell felt like it burned itself under the skin. This is the kind of madness players deal with to complete missions in Biocrisis. The swarm of zombies was destroyed without a single shot, which means the viewer named Agent must open his wallet again and pay for the hidden quest. All of that is great, but now even the new clothes smell like a dead skunk. Ken chatted a little with the audience and quickly collected another wave of donations. While the chat tried to understand how a beginner was clearing the game like a veteran, Ken calmly kept moving forward. He finally left the hospital to breathe the scent of freedom, although everything around was burning, so the smell felt more like an apocalypse barbecue. Reality always comes with disappointment. Everything was on fire, and because of the smoke, almost nothing could be seen. It was the perfect moment to end the stream and return to reality. Ben immediately greeted his friend and reported that at the peak they had more than 200 viewers. Right now, the main page of the gaming platform is flooded with videos of Ken. No streamer in the world would refuse a career start like that. Now the success must be developed because this is only the beginning. Then suggested choosing a nickname because without one there is no future in streaming. After a short moment of thinking, Ken made his choice and returned to the game. From now on he will be called Ghost, thanks to his speed and untouchable style. He decided to chat a little with the audience, although he looked awkward and did not even know what to say. For him this is a completely new experience, so it will take time to get used to the role. Ken promised to keep delivering content for the viewers, and of course continue the Biocrisis run. After reconnecting, he returned to the apocalypse world, and put on the familiar police uniform again. The crazy zombies immediately greeted the streamer. One of them thought about eating his tasty head but ended up with broken ribs and a bullet in the skull. With his aggressive playstyle, the main hero instantly attracted the attention of another presence, because when you play too clean, the game usually sends bigger problems your way. Judging by the voice, this was not a monster but a living human. Right now, Sandra pointed her pistol straight at him, and warned that one more step and Ken would lose his head. It was obvious this girl was a real firecracker even if she is just a game character. Ken offered to get acquainted and immediately made it clear that he was not bitten and not infected. On the contrary, he was trying to get out of this nightmare and did not want to cause extra trouble. It seems he made a good impression on Sandra, who had clearly been without male attention for far too long if you catch the drift. They agreed to cooperate and formed an alliance. It was not hard to guess what the viewers in the chat were talking about at that moment. They had already planned the wedding for these two beauties and were even naming their future children. Sandra suggested moving faster and heading to a safer place. She almost felt like danger was nearby and could not be underestimated. Armed people in yellow suits were searching for survivors in order to collect test samples. Sounds like a dream job if you are a villain from Facebook. If you look closely, you can see the Regenery Farm logo on the suits of these people. Even though they work for a pharmaceutical company, they clearly cannot be trusted, because they are hunting people for experiments, which means they are somehow connected to this entire incident. Sandra suggested avoiding a fight and returning to the camp to warn the others. Just a few minutes later, they arrived at a safe place full of survivors. All of these people were happy to see the officer. After introduction, Sandra led the new guy to meet the local boss. His name is Logan, and he was very glad to hear the mission ended successfully. Logan had no idea that other police officers managed to survive this massacre. One glance was enough to make Ken uneasy. A dark aura was coming from the guy with the strange beard. They had never met before, but one look was enough to understand that Logan was not a real police officer. His identity had to be exposed to push the mission forward. Without wasting time, Ken stated that the police badge was bothering him. Their badges were completely different, which meant one of them had to be a fake. This guy was running investigations faster than Sherlock Holmes, and the viewers loved it. Now it was time to see how Sandra would react to his confidence. On the paper found in the storage, it was written that Logan Myers was wanted and previously convicted of fraud. The moment he realized he had been exposed, he tried to escape, but nobody was letting him go. Sandra had trusted this guy the entire time, and he turned out to be a typical scammer. Now it became clear that this girl is not as sweet as everyone thought. The moment she loses control over her emotions, she instantly turns into a raging monster. A few powerful strikes were enough to knock out several teeth and break Logan's jaw in 2 places. He begged her to stop, but it was already too late. Only now Ken realized what would happen to him if he made even a single mistake. A little later, the survivors witnessed a brutal punishment. Tied up Logan was not even allowed to say his final words. He was simply thrown from the roof to be eaten by zombie dogs. For several seconds, his dying screams could be heard, and they sent chills down everyone's spine. Then the sun disappeared behind the horizon, and everyone seemed to forget about that scumbag. Now it was time to decide what to do next. Logan had been leading the survivors all this time, and now someone had to take command of the group. With the appearance of the pharmaceutical company, staying here became far too dangerous. Sandra suggested leaving the city on their own and not waiting for any support. But without Logan, she looked like a bird that had lost its wings. Our hero thought for a moment and realized this beauty was clearly an important game character. She needed support and someone who would take the initiative. The cunning romantic stepped forward and delivered all the classic words needed in moments like this. He reminded her that now she had someone she could rely on, and he was always ready to lend his courageous shoulder. On the map there was a metro tunnel which looked far safer than any regular building. He quickly came up with a plan, and then felt a warm touch. Sandra melted like ice cream under the hot sun. It was obvious she had been lacking support for a long time, and she was ready to repay that kindness in full. The viewers in the chat squealed like piglets when they realized what was about to happen. They were already grabbing popcorn and cola, waiting for a wild hentai-level scene. Judging by the main hero's face, he clearly did not plan this, but he definitely would not refuse a bedroom scene. Gotta love when the plot moves faster than good internet on strong Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, the author of the manga turned out to be a real scumbag and hid the most interesting part. Instead of satisfying our curiosity, he simply skipped the timeline straight to the next morning. But there is no doubt that Ken definitely showed Sandra exactly how he handles his police baton. Sandra thanked her friend for the night and arranged to meet him in the hall. Meanwhile, Ken had the chance to collect his thoughts and talk with the chat. Then a small boy knocked on the door holding a toy in his hands. He did not come empty-handed and gave the policeman a lost coin. Looking closer, Ken realized that it was a lottery coin and that there was an arcade machine in the hall. The main hero did not see anything strange about it because when you are playing a zombie horror game, arcade machines already stop feeling weird. Unlike him, his best friend Ben was biting his nails and could barely stay on his feet because he knew that a random loot machine meant a chance to obtain something legendary. Unfortunately, beginners almost never win anything except magical green potions. As for real gamblers, they can completely lose their minds from constant losses. A local legend named Anatomy only received a decent reward after 4,000 attempts. Honestly, it is scary to imagine what is going on inside that guy's head and who is even subscribed to him. In short, the arcade machine is usually a complete waste of time for any beginner. Ken only had one coin and the maximum prize was a golden shotgun. He liked the sound of that name, so he decided to play. Activating all of his divine power, he directed the energy straight into the handle of the arcade machine. After that, strange sensations burst outward and it felt like he was watching himself from the outside. Goosebumps ran down his spine and the divine hand clearly tried to guide him. Then he pulled the machine handle and prepared to receive his first prize. What everyone believed was impossible suddenly became absolute reality. The golden shotgun was now in his hands as if it had always belonged there. Now he only needed the first monsters to appear to start a full Terminator-style cleanup. Sandra asked him to hurry because there was still a lot of work ahead. They entered the metro and began exploring the area from every possible angle. Of course, the place was full of disgusting slugs, stinking spiders, and vile creatures with thick green blood. Sandra used the classic method and eliminated enemies with her daggers. Ken decided to try it as well, and honestly, he enjoyed it. They complemented each other perfectly, and from the outside looked like one flawless killing machine. The golden shotgun did not even fire a single shot because everything was already going perfectly. Eventually, they saw light at the end of the tunnel, but it was not what you think. Instead of death, a huge outlet mall was waiting for them. Looking more carefully, they noticed many representatives of the pharmaceutical company. At that moment, the game launched a notification that the second section of the game had been completed. It was the perfect moment to pause and take a little break. Returning to reality, Ken was slightly shocked when his friend screamed like a slaughtered pig. It turned out the viewers were growing every single day, and the clips from the game were gaining even more attention. Ken became the first person to discover a hidden path which made him extremely interesting to the audience. Every day the number of subscribers on his channel keeps growing, and right now it has already passed 1,000. Donations are flowing perfectly, and money keeps landing on the account non-stop. Already now, the streamer and his assistant Ben are earning more than they did at their previous job, and it has only been a few streams. After a short talk with the viewers, Ghost returned to BioCrisis to attract even more subscribers as fast as possible. Right now they must move carefully because the pharmaceutical company is deceiving the government and working against ordinary people. They need to understand what is happening, but under no circumstances should firearms be used. The kills must be silent and clean in pure old-school style. Ghost and Sandra armed themselves with daggers and proved that this method is just as deadly as the classics. One precise movement is enough to slice an unprepared person with a katana straight out of an old Tarantino movie. Problems started when the other masked mercenaries noticed them. One of them tried to call for backup, but quickly regretted that decision. Ken does not like when girls handle all the dirty work, so he decided to show what he could do as well. After that, they calmly checked the perimeter and heard a strange sound. Right above them, a small drone was flying, and it could easily become a problem. Instead of flying away, the drone moved closer and activated a communication channel. A female voice greeted the survivors and asked them for help. The entire city is now under quarantine, which means people must unite for a common goal. Control over the infected zone has been handed to the pharmaceutical company, and right now they are doing whatever they want. Sandra could barely hold back her emotions because Regenery Farm had already tried to kill her several times. The voice from the drone attempted to explain that the pharmaceutical company is developing a vaccine. National troops cannot enter the city without proof. If Sandra and Ken want to call for support and expose the pharmaceutical company, they must provide evidence of their crimes. After these words, the drone turned around and flew away, leaving the heroes with a heavy feeling of emptiness. In the end, their mission led to nothing, and they returned empty-handed. Ghost tried to support his partner and used the same method from yesterday. This dirty romantic clearly would not mind repeating the night games, but right now the focus should be on completing the game. Because of their long absence, they only returned after sunset and faced a harsh reality. A small teddy bear lying on the ground immediately made it clear that something terrible happened here. Sandra understood everything instantly but refused to believe her own instincts. There were no survivors left, only piles of corpses and rivers of blood. She nervously squeezed the small toy and cried from pain while Ken tried his best to calm her down. They almost forgot that the monsters who killed the survivors could still be nearby. Ken felt a dark aura that clearly did not belong to an ordinary human. He looked into the distance and saw something massive and terrifying. The gigantic monster looked like a Chinese version of the Hulk. It roared and cursed everyone around while its voice sounded disturbingly familiar. It was Logan who had transformed into a horrifying creature to take revenge. When he came to the group of survivors, the children refused to play with him. They tried to eliminate him, but instead he slaughtered everyone who stood in his way. Now this giant wanted to do the same to Sandra and Ken, but that was going too far. Logan had crossed every possible line and signed his own death sentence. But finishing him off completely will not be easy at all. Logan has fully merged with the massive entity and now holds monstrous power like he just collected all the Infinity Stones. Instead of wasting time on talk, he instantly rushed into battle. Before the fight, the viewers pooled their money and offered Ken an extra reward. If he defeats the monster by any means, he will receive 25,000 won, and of course he accepts the deal. Now the real question is how to pull this off, because Logan is far from an ordinary zombie. Even before the battle, Ghost told his partner to hide and stay out of the fight. Sandra decided to listen because she is not stupid enough to risk her own skin. This is not some Skyrim NPC charging a dragon with a kitchen knife. Logan learned to regenerate, and now normal bullets barely affect him. Ken decided to combine cold steel with the shotgun and finally see what those golden shells can really do. He attacked from different angles, constantly changing his speed. Shots from the golden shotgun dealt serious damage and prevented the wounds from closing instantly. When the regeneration slowed down, Logan seemed to lose his mind. Honestly, he had already lost it long ago, but now the last pieces of control were gone. His attacks became too wide and predictable, especially for a guy empowered by divine instinct. Ken sliced through the monster's tendons and forced the giant down to its knees. Then the execution began without mercy or hesitation. The battle had already lasted 10 minutes, and the viewers had long stopped arguing about who would win. Now everyone just wanted to see how this chaos would end. Even if the main hero lost, nobody would blame him because the opponent was simply too powerful. Ken was visibly exhausted, and his movements slowed, so at one moment he realized the truth: either he lands a critical strike or he becomes a zombie himself. The guy gathered speed once again, unleashed divine power, and attacked the monster with massive rocks. No matter how Logan screamed, his fate was already sealed. A precise shotgun blast tore a huge hole through his head and sent him forever into the dark abyss. For completing the mission, not only the main reward appeared, but donations also flooded in, bringing more than 2 million won in total. You definitely cannot earn that kind of money at a normal job, and honestly now even I envy the main hero. But relaxing too early would be a mistake because the intense battle started collapsing everything around them. Sandra had to be saved immediately and they had to run. Luckily that part was easy, and Ken once again showed himself as a true superhero. The moment the fight ended, he sensed unexpected guests outside. At that exact second, his wound began glowing with a strange green light. Seeing this strange magic, Sandra pushed away her partner's hand and tried to understand who he really was. The girl instantly lost control, started shouting like crazy, and accused him of working together with the pharmaceutical company. Ken himself did not understand why his wounds suddenly started healing. The injuries simply closed on their own, and his health kept restoring automatically. The lovers' showdown pulled in even more viewers, and the audience began guessing how this drama would end. Some even predicted that Sandra might start throwing hands, and in that case the main hero would be in serious trouble. At one moment she even grabbed her weapon and demanded an explanation immediately. If right now he fails to convince her that everything is under control and that he is on her side, then the entire previous mission will lose all meaning, like finishing half a game and forgetting to save. After a short moment of thinking, Ken activated his charm acting skills and Ryan Gosling level charisma and calmly stepped forward. He explained that he felt the same way Sandra did and that he also could not trust anyone. If she truly believed he was not on her side, she could pull the trigger without hesitation and he would not blame her for it. Strangely enough, those words worked, and the girl began trembling with doubt. Tears appeared in her eyes. Ken did not waste a second and slowly leaned toward the beauty. He asked her to trust him one last time, and of course she agreed. The game launched a new stage, and now the hero faced another choice. He could escape to a safe place or destroy the pharmaceutical company, and it seems Ghost chose the second option. The next few days passed like a blurry dream. Trust does not return so quickly. Any married man will confirm that after eating the last slice of his wife's pizza and spending the next year sleeping in the basement. Even so, Ken slowly and confidently made it clear that he and Sandra needed to stay together. They had to survive this nightmare and eliminate the pharmaceutical company standing behind the zombie apocalypse. The main headquarters of Regenery Farm is heavily guarded, almost like a villain base in a Batman movie. Their eyes and ears are everywhere, so breaking inside will require serious effort. Before the mission began, a female voice sounded through Ken's radio. The girl who constantly stuttered had been trying to contact him for a long time. Her name is Jessica, and she works inside the pharmaceutical company. She is trying to call for help and expose those terrible people. Over the past few weeks, she managed to collect evidence of their crimes, but had no one to deliver it to. If Ken and Sandra are willing to help her, then together they might bring down this nightmare company and try to restore the world to normal. But first they need to obtain a flash drive with secret documents, and for that they must infiltrate the headquarters. Of course, all of this sounds a bit suspicious. No one knows if Jessica can truly be trusted because she might just be another NPC trying to lure the main hero into a trap. The decision was so complicated that Ken even refused to continue and decided to take a short break. During the last mission, his views clearly exploded. Even the top gaming streamer of Korea Delta could not ignore what was happening. When he saw Ghost's gameplay, he refused to believe this was just a rookie. On top of that, Ken became the first person who managed to win Sandra's heart. Now everyone wants the continuation, and viewers are ready to throw any donations just to see what happens next. But there is also a darker side, which can be called cyber parasites. These guys never sleep, and sooner or later they always make their move. Ken still has no idea about the danger. He came to visit his friend and discovered that the slime ball was still sleeping. Barely awake, Ben quickly explained that their work was under threat. Cyber parasites had declared a hunt on the newcomer known as Ghost. Instead of creating original content, they simply steal videos from Ken's channel and make money from the views. Because of that, the main hero could face loss of profit and slow channel growth. Solving this problem is not easy because usually even complaints do not work. Support either sleeps or nobody knows what they are doing, which means the problem must be solved personally. Ken called for them to keep fighting until the very end. It was obvious he had no clue how streaming really works and how the whole system functions. The only thing that might help is direct cooperation with the official developers of BioCrisis. Recently, a letter arrived from the marketing department of that game. They were clearly interested in working with the man who dragged a forgotten game back into the spotlight. Already the very next day, the main hero's channel received a major update. He appeared in front of the viewers with a strange spark in his eyes. Ken confidently announced that the stream now had an official sponsor, the company Gap, which is the developer of BioCrisis. He became the first streamer to sign such a partnership, leaving even the biggest names in the industry behind. From now on, the company's marketing department will promote him, which means the number of subscribers will grow even faster. Of course, everyone started wondering how this happened, so let us rewind time and break it all down. The main hero personally came to the Gap company cafe to negotiate the deal. In exchange for cooperation, they offered him several interesting conditions. Ghost's videos will now receive automatic dubbing, so viewers from all over the world can watch his content. Ken tried to understand why the company chose him, and he had to explain that he is special, almost like the chosen one from the Matrix. According to the original plan, he was supposed to either die or run away from Logan, but instead he broke the entire script and destroyed that massive monster. Now too much attention is focused on him, and the company wants to push his streams to attract new players to BioCrisis. All he needs to do is constantly remind viewers during the broadcast that he is working together with them and collect the bonuses that come with it. In addition to marketing promotion, Ken also managed to negotiate an important innovation. Now nobody else is allowed to use video clips from his streams, otherwise they will automatically receive a ban. This means he becomes the first person to create a monopoly over his own content. People are already comparing the guy to a god even though he has not even finished the first game yet. In any case, following his journey just became even more exciting, and the viewers are demanding the continuation. After a short conversation, he immediately dove back into virtual reality and faced a critical choice. Right now, Ken can turn around and walk away to avoid risk, or he can trust Jessica and obtain the evidence needed to destroy the pharmaceutical company. Sandra was absolutely convinced that it was a trap and tried to talk her partner out of it. Ken had to activate maximum charisma and remind everyone who the real boss is. Ghost clearly intends to go all the way and eliminate those responsible for the apocalypse. Feeling his unwavering confidence, Sandra finally agreed and gave a strangely mysterious smile. Now the next step was infiltrating the headquarters, and the most discreet path led straight through the sewers. The smell down there is beyond description, and one deep breath feels like your insides flip out as if you opened a student's fridge after 3 months without cleaning. Just when Sandra wanted to move faster, Ken sensed danger. Someone was approaching, which meant weapons had to come out immediately. The viewers even started thinking that Ken somehow knows where enemies will appear before they show up. Right now he needed to show maximum speed because behind them rushed a massive swarm of zombie rats. Apparently their leader might be Master Splinter, but the Ninja Turtles are nowhere to be seen. Since it is only rats, nobody needs to show mercy, and turning them into minced meat sounds like the best solution. When the first wave of monsters was destroyed, the hero realized that the nightmare was not over yet. Zombies kept appearing out of nowhere, as if the mission itself refused to be completed. Instead of panicking or screaming for help, our hero simply smiled and even tried to dance. The zombies were far too weak, and one precise shot was enough to send them straight to hell. Ken relied more and more on his instincts. Sometimes he did not even look around, but still sensed danger approaching. When it became clear that the bullets would soon run out, he grabbed a dagger and activated Fruit Ninja mode. Sandra also joined the fun and showed off her deadly accuracy. Together they threw one hell of a party, although honestly that is one party I would never attend. If not for Ken's timely help, he would have already lost his partner a long time ago. Viewers always respect heroes who take risks, so generous donations started pouring in immediately. The only problem is that Sandra was bitten by a rat, and now she could turn into a zombie at any moment. If the girl wants to stay alive, they need to hurry and find the vaccine inside the pharmaceutical company. She decided to move first and take the risks because now she has nothing left to lose. They confidently moved upstairs and instantly grabbed their first hostage. A girl with green hair wearing a lab coat surrendered without any resistance. She immediately tried to explain that her name is Jessica, and she was the one who contacted them earlier. Sandra never trusted people, and definitely did not believe stories like that. She was ready to shoot Jessica in the head, and only Ken's quick intervention calmed the situation. In reality, Jessica is a young and attractive girl who is simply trying to help. She is also one of the game characters, but the problem is that a strange and slightly dark energy surrounds her. Ghost could not ignore that detail, but decided not to ruin everything right from the start. He calmly accepted the flash drive containing secret materials, hoping that maybe it would finally reveal who killed Kennedy. But jokes aside, things are actually going quite well for now. The only problem is that the rest of the secret data is stored on the top floor in the director's office. Jessica cannot risk going there herself, so the main hero and Sandra must head there without any support. The entire building is guarded 24 hours a day, but there is still a way through. Inside the control room, the security system can be disabled, and Jessica is ready to take that risk. She carefully planned everything but completely forgot who she was dealing with. The moment Ken pulled out his knife, the frightened girl instantly saw her entire life flash before her eyes. But then she seemed to forget about the danger after noticing how the wounds on the officer's skin were healing. For her, it looked like a miracle because she had long been working with various test subjects. Sandra did not like that a stranger was touching her boyfriend and constantly tried to interrupt the conversation. But this time Ken asked her to calm down because he really wanted to hear what Jessica had to say. After examining his wounds and the magical regeneration, Jessica suddenly shouted with excitement. She immediately started talking about the elixir that had been studied for years inside this pharmaceutical company. Thanks to the elixir, a human gains maximum regeneration and an incredibly strengthened body. It can cure any disease and even grant something close to immortality. Inside the pharmaceutical company, the elixir is considered the perfect solution for humanity. But there is one huge problem. Previous experiments failed because the test subjects were simply too weak. The clever Jessica hinted that Ken could become the perfect test subject. It seems Jessica truly believes Ken's DNA is the ideal key for creating the elixir. All they need to do is reach the laboratory on the top floor, take the samples, and you can already imagine the rest. Sandra would never allow something like that and immediately made it clear that the officer belongs only to her. She reminded everyone that their main mission is collecting data and everything else is irrelevant. Jessica, however, had no intention of backing down and insisted that the elixir could stop the entire epidemic. The debate could have lasted forever, but the alarm signal ruined everything. The walls suddenly collapsed and a terrifying creature appeared inside the hall. Now this was no ordinary zombie, but a monster known as the Overlord. No one ever prepared our hero for something like this, and it is still not too late to run away. But the system treacherously suggests defeating the monster in order to complete the quest. Doing so would unlock a hidden ending of the game and reveal many secrets. While Ken looked like a little kid who had just been offered candy, Jessica tried to pull him away. She believed the only smart move was to escape and continue the research before it became too late. Once again, Ghost was presented with a choice, and he answered without hesitation. The girls must team up and use the secret passage to reach the surface. While they remain safe, Ken plans to destroy the monster because it will never stop chasing them otherwise. Only after that will they deal with the elixir and cure Sandra. Those confident words were enough, and within a minute, Ghost was left face to face with the Overlord. The developers of the game clearly prepared well and immediately explained why this monster deserves real fear. Before the capsule version existed in the old console edition of the game, this creature was the final boss. It was called the perfect biological weapon created through countless brutal experiments. Fighting this guy was anything but easy because his regeneration sits on a completely absurd level, like he activated a cheat for infinite health. I have only seen something like that with final bosses and cockroaches in the kitchen. One single strike from the Overlord is enough to make even the toughest man urgently change his pants. But since there is nowhere left to run, Ghost accepted the rules of the game. His first attack landed perfectly, but the wound instantly disappeared. To win, he must find the enemy's weak point. Ken used his familiar tactic and fully focused on defense. After several minutes, he noticed that the monster's core was located right in the center of its chest. If he strikes that point directly, victory is guaranteed. The problem is that the core is protected by heavy restraining belts. Everything is getting ridiculously complicated, and the viewers are loving every second of it. Many are secretly hoping the cocky rookie will finally lose because everything so far has been way too perfect. Meanwhile, Ken could not care less about what anyone thinks because he has a goal. He will not leave this place until the game is cleared completely. During another close clash, he finally managed to pierce the weak spot and caught the scent of blood. Now all he needs is to keep the pressure high and never allow the monster to recover. The developers apparently predicted this exact moment. They granted the monster the ability to activate a second regeneration phase and become even stronger. Now this titan is twice as large, and its core is even more heavily protected. Even the golden shotgun with its magical shells can barely help. Honestly, it is hard to understand why Ken stayed to fight this mutant when he could have escaped with two beautiful girls and enjoyed a far better evening. No matter how he attacks, the weak point is almost impossible to break. Yet there is still a way to reduce the defense and force the monster to take a step toward its own destruction. Ken deliberately took a position that made him look vulnerable. When the monster closed the distance, all he had to do was defend and force the Overlord into the acid. All this time, a tank of toxic liquid had been hanging above its head like it was begging to be released. The main hero only needed to fire one shot and the acid would handle the rest. Now the monster could barely stand while its regeneration could not keep up with the damage. Sometimes an acid shower works miracles. The core was now completely exposed and nothing stood in the way of sending the boss straight to the grave. At point-blank range, there was no defense and the hidden quest finally came to an end. Gap Company immediately congratulated the streamer on his victory and credited $500,000 to his account. All of that was great, but now it was time to find the girls. They should have been hiding somewhere upstairs, so Ken immediately headed to the upper floor while keeping his eyes open for danger. At some point, a rustling sound appeared as if another zombie had gotten hungry and decided to cook brain soup. Two arms suddenly wrapped around the hero and he did not even have time to react. Behind him stood Jessica, who with tears in her eyes confessed that Sandra had turned into a zombie. But for Ken, those beautiful words meant nothing because his divine instinct was telling him he was being deceived. He refused to believe anything without proof and demanded to see Sandra's body. Jessica refused to back down and kept repeating that the blonde had long since lost control of her body. If he truly wanted to save his friend, then he needed to become part of the experiment. Once again, Ken faced a choice: either agree or go searching for his partner himself. This guy clearly lacks any sense of self-preservation, so he accepted the experiment. Honestly, I stopped understanding long ago why he keeps making such ridiculous decisions. But if people in stories always made smart choices, half of manga plots would never exist. Maybe you know the answer and can explain it in the comments. After hearing his decision, Jessica happily guided him to her laboratory. No matter how the viewers tried to stop the main hero, it was like he could not hear them. The only thing that interested him were the donations raining down for every risky move he made. He enjoyed feeling like he was standing on the edge between life and death. Strangely enough, this was exactly when he felt truly alive. In the real world, it was already deep into the night, but he had no desire to leave. Ghost announced the start of a marathon stream to thank all the viewers who stayed with him so late. No matter how much Ben dreamed about getting at least some sleep, it looked like he would be cutting game highlights until morning. Grateful viewers flooded the hero with donations and prepared themselves to see how this madness would end. Entering the laboratory, he looked around but noticed nothing strange. Everything was far too clean and bright for a place where such experiments take place. In the next room, horrifying specimens of monsters could be seen, the result of countless experiments. Once they were ordinary people who simply had terrible luck. Unfortunately, those people did not possess proper genetic compatibility and failed to create the elixir of immortality. Jessica asked Ken not to worry because she was sure he was the one who could return the world to its normal state. The moment he realized what had happened here, a blinding flash of light exploded in his eyes and mechanical arms grabbed him from every direction. When he finally woke up, he could barely move his body. Now he would become just another test subject so the pharmaceutical company could finish their experiments. Jessica had no reason to lie anymore and finally spoke her true thoughts. It turned out that Regenry Farm was responsible for the entire apocalypse. Through endless attempts to create the perfect elixir, they transformed huge numbers of people into zombies. Later, the developers realized that if the whole world became infected, only those with strong compatibility with the elixir would survive. After the global apocalypse began, mercenaries from the pharmaceutical company started hunting the remaining survivors. They captured people and performed experiments on them without thinking about consequences. They did not care about the number of victims because they believed that sooner or later success was guaranteed and everything would be restored. For money, these people were ready to step over anyone and felt no shame about their methods. Sometimes it feels less like a pharmaceutical company and more like the board of directors from Resident Evil. Ken could do nothing about it now and was forced to wait for his fate. He was ready to die, but at the last moment, a perfectly timed bullet struck the target. Sandra arrived just in time and saved her partner from certain death. After freeing Ghost, she ordered him to run immediately. At first, it might look like the worst had already passed, but a heavy feeling refused to leave the main hero. His intuition warned him that the real nightmare was still ahead and he had to prepare for battle. The two of them stepped into an elevator to reach the top floor, and Sandra finally explained what happened. Jessica had attacked her, and only quick reactions allowed Sandra to escape. She managed to sneak into the director's office where she found a very interesting photograph. Jessica looked almost identical to the director. Could they really be mother and daughter? There was no time to waste because Jessica had very little time left. Soon she would turn into a zombie. Even so, she still scolded Ken for his reckless decisions. He had to activate romantic mode again and explain that the hero only wanted to save the woman he cared about. The words worked perfectly, and tears appeared in the eyes of the beautiful officer. They left the arguments behind and reached the top floor. The army should have already sent a helicopter to the roof because Sandra had previously transmitted a distress signal. All that remained was to collect the evidence and escape from this cursed place. Ken hurried to the control station where he discovered a large amount of documents. It turned out those monsters had been secretly monitoring him and had planned to kidnap him from the very beginning. Using the USB drive, Ghost gained access to the classified files. The original ending of the game was supposed to be completely different. The main hero gathers secret information and calls the army to eliminate the pharmaceutical company. But in the end, it is revealed that Jessica had been controlling the chief military general the entire time. She prevented the truth from leaking out and continued the experiments to finally obtain the long-awaited elixir. Now the truth will reach the world no matter what, and scientists will try to create the elixir through more humane methods. After gathering all the documents, the Allies rushed to the rooftop where the rescue helicopter should land. Only one final step remained before salvation, and from that moment, everything collapsed. Did you really think it would end that easily and the game would simply be cleared? The creators of BioCrisis had other plans because from nowhere a mysterious power appeared greater than any zombie. The rescue helicopter was destroyed instantly with a single attack. The strength of that strike made it clear that the enemy before them was far more dangerous than any zombie. Overlord was considered the final boss, but that was far from the truth. The moment Ken saw who he would have to face, he finally confirmed his worst suspicion. His bad feeling had not betrayed him. Jessica herself was the true final boss of this game. Ordinary bullets cannot even scratch her because she operates on a completely different level. Standing before them is the final overlord, and this time it is female. She came here to obtain Ghost's genes and finally create the long-awaited elixir. From this moment, the battle turned into a fight for life and death. With every passing second, Sandra felt worse and worse, but she still risked her life to protect the man she loved. Honestly, I would suggest Ken step aside and watch how the girls decide which one becomes his future wife. But he chose a different strategy and jumped straight into the fight. From the outside, it looked like the strangest love triangle in the history of the zombie apocalypse. At that exact moment, another helicopter appeared in the sky carrying mercenaries from the pharmaceutical company. They opened fire with a machine gun and did not spare a single bullet. Ken had to aim perfectly and send those slime balls straight into hell. Meanwhile, Jessica completely lost her mind like she just learned Timothée Chalamet would not win an Oscar. She reached her maximum evolution and attacked without hesitation. The most interesting part is that she cannot allow Ken to die because his DNA is too valuable for the elixir. That weakness could be used against her. Ken decided to improvise and handed the shotgun to his partner. From the outside, it almost looked like he was trying to escape and dump the responsibility on someone else. But do not rush to call him a coward because he clearly knew what he was doing. He needed Sandra to distract the monster while he searched for a fuel tank. After that, Ken quickly spilled the fuel and prepared for the final stage of his plan. He stepped toward the edge of the roof and saw a massive horde of zombies that had been hungry for a very long time. By that moment, Sandra could barely stand on her feet. It was the perfect moment to lure Jessica and stage the final act of this story. Instead of continuing the fight, Ghost suddenly jumped toward the zombie horde below. He knew Jessica would never allow that to happen and would jump after him without thinking. All he needed was for her to land on the gasoline and then ignite that monstrous woman. Ken grabbed his dagger at the right moment and calmly watched as Jessica turned into dinner for the zombies. The system declared Ghost the winner over the final boss, and the developers immediately transferred more than 1 million won to his account. In all that chaos, he almost forgot about Sandra, who could barely move her hand. Right now, there was no time for romance, because the monsters were already climbing onto the roof. The moment they smelled fresh meat, their instincts went completely wild. The two allies pressed their backs together and under the setting sun prepared for the final battle. A classic moment when the music in a movie turns epic, and half the characters usually never make it to the credits. It looked like this was truly the end, and even the viewers had already stopped believing in the hero's victory. There were simply too many monsters around, and nobody understood how anyone could escape this hell. The bullets were running out while the screams and gunshots attracted even more creatures. At one moment, Sandra decided to sacrifice her final ammunition and handed it to Ken. All she asked was that he shoot her in the head and spare her from unnecessary suffering. This is the kind of conversation lovers have in a zombie apocalypse. Sandra refused to become a horrifying monster and wanted him to remember her exactly as she was. It turned out that before the conflict with Jessica, an important conversation had taken place. Sandra was pregnant with Ken's child and had been risking the baby this entire time. If she turned into a monster, no one would be able to save the child. That was when Jessica offered a solution. She suggested Sandra join the pharmaceutical company in exchange for the elixir. In that case, the child could be saved, and the offer sounded dangerously tempting. But as we know, a woman like Sandra would never accept such a vile deal or betray her ideals. She was ready to die with the child inside her, if that meant staying human. For her, that kind of death was far better than letting Ken sacrifice himself and become another failed experiment. Even though her words carried painful truth, Ghost still refused to pull the trigger. He noticed that his partner's body was glowing with a strange green light, and her wounds were slowly healing. Sandra's child carried the father's genes, and that allowed her body to regenerate. If anyone feels confused by this complicated story, that is completely understandable. Honestly, it feels like the writer came up with this after 3 cans of energy drinks and somehow still deserves an Oscar because he even figured out a way for both the hero and his partner to escape death. Out of nowhere, a helicopter appeared carrying a professional Sicario. Ken did not hesitate, grabbed his partner and sprinted toward safety. Everything happened at lightning speed because the zombies kept closing in from every direction. Somehow they managed to climb onto the helicopter and escape that nightmare zoo. Even with a happy ending, neither of them looked happy. Even now, Sandra did not trust the situation. She grabbed a pistol and demanded to know how the soldier knew their exact location. At that moment, he calmly asked her to relax and confidently removed his mask. Standing before them was Leon, one of the major players in the world of Biocrisis, and simply a good guy. He used to be a police officer but now works with the army investigating the outbreak. He had received the drone recordings and from that moment carefully monitored Ken and Sandra. That meant he could now receive all the evidence against the pharmaceutical company. This marked the end of the mission that almost ended in catastrophe. The long journey was finally over, and Biocrisis had officially been cleared. While viewers applauded and celebrated the hero, the company unlocked the epilogue. After receiving the secret materials, professional soldiers arrived in the city. They moved through the area, clearing monsters and checking every floor of the Regenry Farm headquarters. When the general saw Jessica's photograph, he looked slightly disturbed. Then he gained full access to the information and copied everything onto a flash drive. The city would be completely destroyed because one failure like this was already too much. With that, the epilogue came to an end, and viewers were left wondering how a rat managed to appear among the army. Ken told his subscribers not to worry and promised more streams in the future. All he needed now were stronger donations to recover his health and return with new power. He said goodbye and returned to the real world where his heroics were being discussed in headlines everywhere. In just 1 week, an ordinary loser had turned into a global sensation. Many were already calling him a future legend, although some people still doubted his talent. Now everyone wondered what he would do next and whether Ghost could achieve the same success in other games. Already the next morning, the Biocrisis community started discussing updates to make the game more accessible for casual players. With everything that had happened, nobody really paid attention to Ben's work behind the scenes. That guy had pushed himself hard to help his friend succeed, and during all that time he barely slept at all. After a week living on chips and cola, he turned into a chubby dude who honestly looked more like a zombie. A poll on the channel had finally finished where viewers suggested new games for Ken. Now he had to make a choice and begin streaming something completely different. Of course, most people originally came to watch him destroy zombies, so the next game would probably start with fewer views. But with time, it could bring in new subscribers and even bigger money. Some streamers become masters of a single game. Others focus on one specific genre. There are creators who only play online titles or those who constantly switch between different games. Ken decided that from now on he would play what he actually enjoys. A rare thought for a guy who voluntarily streamed a zombie apocalypse. Before this, he believed that for a successful career you only needed to play well, but now he understood it was not that simple. Clearing levels only works when you are in the right mood, so he wanted to choose something that truly felt fun. Maybe this would hurt the views, but at least he would be happy. Ben gave his friend complete freedom as long as he picked something. But instead of an obvious choice, it turned out that Ken simply wanted to rest. These weekends would pass without any streams, and for any editor that is the worst news possible. Strangely enough for Ben, this might actually help. Just look at this fatty. He had not showered for more than a week, and the dark circles under his eyes looked like something straight out of a monster movie. He clearly needed rest and to forget about all these games and next week return ready to work again. During their conversation, Ben suggested finding a manager who could negotiate with developers and promote the streamers' interests. He knew one guy who would fit perfectly for this role, and all they needed was to head to the city center to negotiate. They were talking about a guy named Park Joo-ho who had lost his job today. He had always been too shy and calm and seemed to lack ambition. At the same time, he always did his job well and definitely did not deserve such disrespect. Now he would have to start everything from scratch and begin searching for a new job again. He had not felt happy for a long time, and deep down he was even a little relieved about being fired. When he approached his apartment, he noticed two strange figures. These idiots were trying to break into his home without permission. Clearly, the best way to offer someone a job is to start with an attempted break-in. When they noticed that Park was standing behind them, they did not even bother running away. The truth was that all three of them were childhood friends. As soon as they entered Park's apartment, they immediately explained their idea. They wanted him to become their manager and represent their interests in the streaming world. Even though Park had not spoken with these guys for a long time, he still remembered the happy childhood memories. They always had fun together, so why not take the risk, especially since he had already lost his job. On top of that, Ben offered the manager a solid salary. In just 1 week, they had already earned huge money, and this was only the beginning. Ken had awakened his talent and was now building a full team, promising growth and serious money. An offer like that was impossible to refuse. Every time they joined forces, something fun always happened. Park had been miserable for too long to reject such an opportunity, so after a short thought, he agreed. Starting Monday, they would launch their new venture together like school kids who attended a Tony Robbins seminar and suddenly believed they could become billionaires in a few weeks. That very evening, our hero finally made a decision about the next game. The viewers had waited long enough and demanded clarity, so he went live and announced that he would now play Mystic League. Angry comments immediately poured in from every direction, and many viewers even unsubscribed from the channel, saying that Ghost had completely lost his mind. The internet can survive a zombie apocalypse, but never a change of game. The number of active viewers dropped a little, but for Ken that was not a problem at all. Ken quickly changed the topic and announced that a new manager had joined his team. Now someone would watch the chat and stop arrogant clowns from writing garbage. And now it was time to get down to business and dive into Mystic League. Not long ago, the famous game finally received its virtual reality sequel. The difficulty level was so brutal that many streamers refused to even try because nobody wanted to crash their reputation. The concept of the game is simple. A team of 5 players fights on an island against other teams. The main objective is to capture the enemy base, and that requires not only strength but real strategy. The extreme difficulty instantly attracted the young genius. He asked the fans not to jump to conclusions and promised that things were about to get wild. Since childhood, he had always loved team missions, and now he decided to return to his roots. The game finally launched, and all that remained was to choose a character. Ghost refused to search for an easy path and selected the least obvious option. His friends held their breath, unable to hide their excitement. Thanks to his previous success, Ken gained access directly to the professional league. Real masters gather there, which means everything from the very start will be far more difficult than BioCrisis. Normally when choosing a character, streamers prefer choosing a mage class. But Ken, as always, chose chaos instead of comfort, and ruined everything again. This genius idiot deliberately picked the martial arts class known as ninja. According to the gaming community, this is one of the weakest choices possible, or at least that is what they believe. But we all know that Ken does not care about other people's opinions. If this guy decided he would be a ninja, then not even Master Splinter himself could stop him. Judging by their reactions, his teammates were not thrilled about it. They assumed they were stuck with a clueless rookie who could barely play. Ghost asked them for patience and promised he would not disappoint. At that moment, he received his first mission and now had to win 5 games in a row. The moment the match began, this guy immediately showed insane speed. He did not wait for his team and rushed forward alone. Besides other players, the island also hides dangerous creatures. Relax for even a second and terrifying wolves will attack from every direction. Ken looked like he did not care at all and barely noticed the danger. The idiot was literally picking his nose when a pack of monsters surrounded him. He managed to block the first strike, but instantly realized how dangerous the situation was. If he wanted to survive, he needed to unleash his full power and the experience of an ancient ninja clan. The chat suddenly went silent because viewers had no idea what would happen next. They stared at their favorite streamer, waiting to see how quickly he would get destroyed. Nobody even imagined that ninja abilities could rival the power of a veteran mage. All it takes is controlling inner energy and directing it into the right flow. At that moment, our hero activated the power of severance, and just a second later from the surrounding stones a gigantic monster rose. Now he could practically sip a cocktail while watching the execution of the wolves. The pack never saw that coming, but whining about it was already too late. Ken once again felt the sweet taste of victory, and the number of viewers on the stream started rising again. The rest of the team was not having such a sweet time. They were struggling hard and barely holding under the pressure. Our hero had to rush in to save them and rescue those clowns. He activated full GigaChad mode and started carrying the entire squad by himself. From that moment, nobody dared to call him weak again. He adapted to the ninja body as if he had been born for it. While the others hesitated, Ken unleashed maximum skill. He knocked opponents around like bowling pins and did not even sweat. Watching this fight almost feels like the developers accidentally turned on tutorial mode for Grandma. Everything looked way too easy, and honestly I expected more blood and chaos. Ken somehow senses what the audience wants and delivers the spectacle right on time. His ninja abilities combine perfectly with his divine talents. The result looks insanely cool, especially that double kill using fire. After saving his teammate, the battles continued. This island is packed with too many villains to even think about taking a break. The viewer count slowly climbed because rumors on the internet spread faster than wildfire. People always enjoy watching a nobody ignore level gaps and stomp everyone. This overconfident genius even found time to chat with viewers and count donations. Within just a few hours, he secured 4 straight victories. And do not even think that he planned to stop there. Ghost looked completely tireless and kept entertaining his audience with brutal battles. But we all know that sooner or later every winning streak comes to an end. Just now information arrived that a special player had entered the server. From this moment, Ken could forget about an easy ride. Sure, he did great crushing every noob on the island, but now the real test begins. An experienced streamer with a massive number of subscribers is already here. The streamer known as Genome is eager to test the strength of the rookie. The viewer count instantly tripled because everyone smelled blood and the sound of broken bones. For now, Genome is just having fun casually slaughtering monsters. It looks like he wants to warm up before hunting down the local ninja. His subscribers already revealed that Genome currently holds second place in the ranking. If he wants to taste victory again, he will have to face the ninja. If Ken had actually been reading the chat, he would know that a hunt had already begun for his head. Only when a wealthy viewer offered a paid mission did he finally learn that someone called Genome had entered the island. Ghost did not care much about the news and calmly accepted the challenge. He headed toward the eastern lands to find his next target. A dark aura filled everything around, which meant danger was closer than it seemed. Magical attacks using cards turned out to be far more complicated than expected. Finally they met and looked straight into each other's eyes. Genome skipped all the formalities and instantly launched into battle. His speed was impressive. It was obvious that this guy perfectly understood the moment to strike. He delivered several crushing blows, but the ninja did not even flinch. The viewers barely had time to place bets and opinions split everywhere. 2 massive fan bases were now deciding which of their champions would prove stronger. Finally, the special effects kicked in because honestly, I was already starting to miss real competition. Let us slow down for a second and take a closer look at what is actually happening here. Genome is an experienced player, so he immediately pulls out his strongest cards. Card magic combined with spellcasting is a serious threat for any average streamer. But this time Genome ran into someone special, a guy who does not fear cheap tricks. With every passing minute, Ken unlocks more of his abilities and fights like he has spent his entire life inside the body of a ninja. Even Genome's fans are slowly starting to fall in love with Ghost, and I am not talking only about the girls. As for Ken, he started strong, but now his mana reserves are running dry. If he wants to win this fight, he must finish the job quickly. Card-based attacks drain huge amounts of energy because he has to defend himself against multiple strikes at the same time. Because of the constant defense, Ghost barely gets a chance to launch his own attack. But everything changes the moment a large bounty appears for eliminating Genome. Ken instantly feels the excitement and switches tactics. He waits until Genome relaxes completely and forgets about caution. Then Ken disappears for a moment, like a frightened rabbit escaping the battlefield. Some viewers assumed the fight was already over and left the chat, although the real chaos had just begun. Ghost's attacks started raining down from every direction like a storm after a long drought. His aggressive moves attracted every monster from the valley into the battlefield. Now Genome was forced to defend himself and temporarily forget about attacking. At that exact second, the perfect moment opened for maximum damage. Our hero played it perfectly. Long preparation, smart strategy, and flawless timing. Now Genome had no doubts that he was facing a true master of martial arts. The explosion was so loud that even my neighbors thought a boss raid had started in my apartment. The decisive victory instantly brought Ghost even more subscribers. Of course, Genome will respawn because this is still just a game, but the victory itself cannot be taken away. The viewers flooded our hero with donations, and because of that he relaxed a little too much. Someone should warn this idiot that round 2 is about to begin and his backside will be in serious danger. Genome is not used to losing and he will definitely come back for revenge. This time he will not be distracted by cheap tricks and sneaky strategies. Something far stronger must be used, like the full magical power of space itself. Genome also changed his approach and began setting traps. He cannot afford another defeat and is ready to go all in. On top of that, this game has a very interesting rule. If someone kills the number 1 ranked player, all of his achievements transfer to the winner. If Genome takes revenge, he will instantly reclaim his rightful throne. To do that, he spreads magical traps everywhere like a professor from Hogwarts. Ordinary streamers almost never notice danger like that, but Ken is a completely different beast. His intuition is on another level, and because of that, he senses danger even with his eyes closed. That cowardly Count Dracula was so afraid of risk that he called his entire team for backup. For Ken, this was a brand new experience, and judging by his face, the maniac was actually enjoying the danger. He would gladly fight an entire enemy army as long as the payment was good. The battle started aggressively because the enemy attacks did not stop for several minutes straight. It was obvious this was a true squad of suicidal warriors who clearly forgot about the instinct of self-preservation. At first everything went smoothly, and then a cute teddy bear suddenly transformed into a giant Godzilla from AliExpress. Ken definitely was not prepared for something like that, but retreat was no longer an option. He had to activate the water element skill and flood everything around him. Since the island clearly had no plumber, the enemy team quickly found themselves drowning in serious problems. Ken almost looked like he was mocking them because he blocked every attack alone while constantly striking back. The viewers loved seeing their hero attacked from every direction and supported him even more intensely. Donations started raining in from everywhere, even from people who previously disliked Ghost. For the first time in a long while, the money did not even matter because the situation had become truly intense. Genome then activated the Joker skill, although honestly I have no idea what that even means. Some creepy circus clown appeared like the writer suddenly fell in love with classic horror movies where clowns slice everyone apart. Sure, it looked flashy and dramatic, but there was still no real result, and I am not talking about politicians this time. Ghost confidently called upon the earth element and stopped the enemy assault completely. His health and mana dropped significantly, but the move allowed him to seize control of the battle. Meanwhile, Genome turned into a frightened girl, calling for help from Mommy. Darkness swallowed the battlefield, thanks to the ninja ultimate ability. This skill is known as Dark Knight. In the past, streamers could only dream about combining high-level techniques like this. Ken became the first who managed it, and that allowed him to wipe out the entire enemy team. When Genome was left alone, he lost the last drop of confidence. The only thing he managed to do was scream in pain while realizing his complete helplessness. He failed to escape a second defeat, and Ken secured the victory with ease. After that, there was no respawn, which meant Genome's team had lost their leader. To avoid losing more ranking points, the boss advised his teammates to surrender immediately. For the first time in his life, he showed real interest, even though he used to consider other streamers nothing more than trash. After defeating the leader, Ken rushed straight toward the enemy base. The allies ignored Genome's advice and decided to keep fighting anyway. With that decision, they basically signed their own death sentence in record time. Honestly, it almost looked like the main hero had it way too easy, especially after defeating Genome. He did not even need help from his allies, and once again handled everything himself. Genome was still nearby the entire time but could not interfere with the battle. He simply watched as his base was destroyed by some guy who had been a nobody yesterday. Someone should tell that man his subscriber count is about to drop. Even the most loyal fans will switch to Ghost's side because everyone loves a winner. Long story short, the battle finally came to an end. Ken secured a dominant victory, completed every mission, and collected a massive paycheck. Now he could finally take off that ridiculous costume and chat with viewers. But the most interesting moment was still ahead when Genome suddenly sent him a friend request. This was not just a simple friend request, it was a full apology for their rough first encounter. Genome admitted he had been wrong calling Ken a rookie, and said he wanted to start everything from a clean slate. It would be a good idea to become friends with such a talented player, especially after a portion of his subscribers had already switched to Ghost's side. With that conversation, Ken ended the stream and returned to reality. Genome did the same, and in real life his name is Nam Ji Hwan. The first thing he did was discuss views and rankings with his assistant. Many subscribers were already leaving to join Ghost's channel, and that clearly was not part of the plan. If he wanted to stay popular and continue growing, he could not simply hand first place to some unknown newcomer. Ghost had instantly captured the attention of a huge portion of the Mystic League audience. While he said goodbye and promised to return soon, Ben and Park could barely contain their excitement. The one enjoying the victory the most was the big guy who seemed to forget that this meant even more work for him. Now he would have to edit videos day and night because the amount of content had exploded. His talent for filming and editing actually appeared back in school. When the nerdy Park once got into a fight with local bullies, his friends did not rush to help immediately. First, they calmly recorded everything on video and only then jumped in to save their friend like true content creators. Even back then, Ken stood out with his fighting skills and could handle an entire crowd alone, and Ben happily filmed the whole thing so later they could blackmail the troublemakers. Thanks to that little scheme, the friends earned their first money, and Park still remembers those days with a warm smile. The very next day, the big guy proudly showed the results of his editing work. The highlight videos gathered massive views and attracted huge attention online. Everyone talked not only about Ghost's victory but also about Genome's defeat. Because of that, the subscriber count reached 17,000, and the company Triple G that created Mystic League invited them to a meeting. But the surprises were not over because Genome made his next move as well. He proposed a joint stream to strengthen their connection and expand their success. It would be foolish to refuse working with such a famous streamer. Ghost happily accepted and told the viewers that something huge was coming soon. The collaboration stream would take place in a completely different game focused on survival. Before meeting Genome, Ken decided to practice a little. The rules were simple. 100 players are dropped into a limited territory, and the main goal is survival. Whoever remains the last survivor will take the grand prize and gain a massive wave of new subscribers. For now, everything looks fine except that Ghost only has his bare fists instead of weapons. If he wants to survive, he must find the nearest storage and grab something serious. For the landing, he did not even use a parachute, as if nobody told him that smashing into the ground might end with a broken neck. After landing, he quickly looked around, and his intuition told him exactly where to move next. The area was packed with warehouses full of weapons, and all he had to do was reach them before the Call of Duty rats showed up. The opponents were already hiding and decided to play a deadly game of hide and seek. One wrong step, and our main hero would turn into minced chicken. Obviously, that was not part of his plan, so he had to get ruthless. He remembered watching Kung Fu Panda and decided to unleash a few moves straight from that cartoon. The only thing missing were dramatic screams from an Indian action movie, and the show would have been perfect. Honestly, this game looks even more fun than Mystic League. Here, everyone fights for themselves, and the number of enemies is insane, which makes the mission brutally difficult even for geniuses. Then the prank completely went out of control because one of the killers refused to shoot and grabbed an axe instead. The whole scene looked straight out of A Nightmare on Elm Street, but Ken decided to play along with his opponent. He finished the guy with his bare hands, knowing the viewers would love it. Technology has come so far that killing with bullets is no longer impressive, and now you have to throw hands like a real fighter. The subscribers kept sending tricky missions. None of them were very special because every challenge basically meant killing as many enemies as possible. Of course, not everyone wanted to fight at close range. There were also clever snipers who stayed protected and refused to risk their necks. One of those snipers could not understand who kept eliminating all his targets. When he finally decided to scan the area, he made the biggest mistake of his life. A bullet landed perfectly and the sniper instantly lost his brains, although honestly he was not using them much anyway. After that, our hero started getting a little bored and the whole situation felt dull. He thought about what he could do to entertain the viewers and suddenly began shooting endlessly at moving cars. Pulling that off required maximum skill, anything for subscribers and extra donations. The haters were already tired of watching this guy succeed and suggested someone should finally launch a nuclear warhead at him. For comments like that, Manager Park instantly handed out bans like a strict teacher catching students cheating during an exam. Half an hour after the match began, the location started shrinking like the zone in PUBG. The number of players dropped, which meant the safe area had to close in. Ghost did not seem worried at all because he jumped into a brand new Audi and showed that he was ready to star in the next Fast and Furious movie. Everyone started shooting at him, but Ken could not care less. He intentionally attracted as many enemies as possible just to deliver them some Christmas presents. The only problem is that Santa usually brings candy and toys while Ghost throws grenades and spreads chaos. On the other hand, it was completely fair. Bad kids receive broken bones and concussions from Grandpa Ghost. The troll even started laughing like he knew perfectly well that he had completely lost his mind. Now only half of the players remained, and the territory started shrinking again. The smaller the space, the faster the real slaughter begins. Ken started landing clean headshots without even trying, and when he ran out of bullets, he simply activated an electric field. Looks like this guy watched The Green Mile and decided to fry everyone with pure electricity. The subscribers could not hide their excitement and kept calling their idol the best streamer in the world. As for the other players, they already understood that fighting was pointless. These guys scattered in every direction trying to survive, but their speed could never compete with the flight of a bullet. The battle royale slowly turned into a game of hide and seek where everyone was terrified of a single streamer. When the bullets ran out, grenades joined the party to add even more spectacle. Everyone was having fun, both the viewers and Ghost. The only ones complaining were the other players who no longer had any chance to win. At one point they even decided to use cars to escape the danger zone. Those fools still did not realize that the electric field skill would catch every single one of them. Bodies exploded into tiny pieces, burned in flames, and screamed in pain while Ken kept laughing like a complete maniac. He secured the final victory, collected a mountain of donations, and thanked his fans. The warm-up before the joint stream with Genome turned out extremely successful. Juan logged in to check the results and clearly was not prepared for what he saw. He already understood that he would face a skilled streamer, but this level of gameplay was something else entirely. As for our main hero, he returned to his friends once again. Ken was slowly getting used to the role of a genius and already started acting like Tony Stark without the suit. While Ben constantly repeated that his friend was the best in the world, Park looked at things a little differently. He said nothing in the world is perfect, like someone who clearly never watched Avengers Infinity War. According to his words, even genius players can easily become hated. You cannot simply keep winning forever, because in that case viewers will never feel sympathy or emotional connection with the hero. People need to fall in love with Ghost, and that requires a smart strategy. This is the perfect moment to build a fan base and a real community. They need paid subscriptions and custom emojis, so active viewers feel special even while chatting. The idea may sound naive, but it actually works. It is also time to register a company and start paying taxes officially. If they ignore that step, the government might show up uninvited, and then the streamers will face serious trouble. Park promised to handle all the details and instantly made his friends happy. After all, that was exactly why they invited him, and now he was simply doing his job. The only thing left now was choosing a name for the company. Ken suggested the name Perfect Team, and surprisingly his friends agreed. Someone really needs to tell them this sounds way too sweet and naive, like kids who read too many comics and suddenly believe they are invincible. Right before ending the conversation, Ben added that their channel had started attracting stream snipers. If we skip the boring explanations, the idea is actually simple. Stream snipers are players who do not care about completing the game because their only goal is hunting the strongest players. Viewers dislike them, but top streamers fear them. Already the next day, the manager's strategy started paying off. Ghost launched a partnership program and invited viewers to play directly against him. To join, they had to pay an entry fee and receive the chance to hunt their favorite streamer. Anyone who survived the challenge or personally killed Ken would take the entire reward. The number of volunteers was bigger than a free giveaway on Steam, way over 100. A randomizer had to be used to keep everything fair and transparent. Only a few minutes later, the mission began and the most active Ghost subscribers received the chance to personally hunt his head. The whole thing did not look very fan-friendly, but those are the rules of this crazy world. Of course, a lot of haters showed up dreaming about cutting off his head, but there were also some chill players who simply wanted to see Ghost hunt with their own eyes. They were ready to pay any price just to prove that experience can also be bought. Ken, however, could not relax because the haters were waiting exactly for that moment. He had not even landed yet, and someone was already trying to choke him out mid-air. Nobody promised it would be easy, so improvisation became the only option. Fighting with bare hands had always been his trademark, and today he proved it once again. After dealing with the annoying hater, Ken calmly grabbed the guy's parachute and landed safely. Now he had a small advantage and quickly moved to secure a strong position on the map, while also searching for weapons. As always, Ken did not save bullets and eliminated even those who approached asking for an autograph. The viewers were going crazy for this guy, and were already waiting for the second part of this fan meeting. Thanks to his intuition, he constantly stayed one step ahead and sensed danger even with his eyes closed. It even reached the point where he casually walked through a house and fought without weapons to avoid making noise. The guy moved at insane speed, like Sonic himself had bitten him. While he kept collecting kills and rewards, someone was quietly watching him. A beautiful fan hid inside a silent building and carefully followed every move he made. She did not rush to shoot as if she was enjoying watching Ghost fight. Watching the stream online is great, but being right there is a completely different level. When you are that close, you can see the emotions, the tension, and even the sweat running down someone's forehead. The fangirl stared at him too obviously, and eventually got noticed. When she realized she had been exposed, she started shaking like a soaked kitten. The lover of dangerous girls was already there, trying to decide what to do next. Seeing that the girl was unarmed, Ken decided to introduce himself and chat with the fan for a moment. Nothing seemed dangerous until it suddenly turned out that the girl was a hardcore maniac. Ken still did not understand that yet because his intuition was telling him that incoming bullets were about to turn his brain into minced meat. While the fangirl was screaming in fear, our hero activated Matrix mode once again and stopped the bullets. Then, with the smile of a complete maniac, he fired back and quickly eliminated the sniper. Lately, way too many weirdos have been hunting him first. There was that guy in the corridor who tried to find out the color of his underwear, and now a girl who at first looked cute and innocent. Everything changed when she finally revealed her wish and asked him to knock her out as hard as possible. Nobody expected a twist like that. These modern princesses who love hardcore chaos and animal instincts. At first Ken tried to refuse, but the fangirl did not leave him any choice. He had to react fast and prove that he did not care who he knocked out. One punch was enough to send her into deep sleep and earn a bunch of dislikes. Meanwhile, the circle kept shrinking because fewer and fewer players remained alive. While running past a row of school buses, Ken suddenly got an idea. He was never known as the smartest guy, so do not expect anything genius here. The stream quality had improved, and now they had to produce even more highlight clips for the channel. Ben would definitely need to find an editing assistant, or he would lose his mind working nights non-stop. Today's stream was already becoming legendary because besides normal fans, there were also professionals fighting in the match. The Holy Cow team last year won the Korean Gamer League. They were considered the absolute best, and today they plan to challenge our hero. Finally, we might see some real intrigue instead of all those rich weirdos who joined the match for questionable reasons. Ken switched into school bus driver mode and calmly headed toward the city center. His intuition told him to slow down because an ambush might be waiting ahead. The enemies planned to shoot out his tires and then confidently destroy the bus. The plan sounded solid, but their intentions had been obvious for several minutes already. Ghost activated Need for Speed Most Wanted mode and started drifting like it was the last race of his life. When the bus flipped over, grenades started falling to the ground like hot pies. I probably do not need to explain why they call them that. The reason is painfully obvious. The genius strategists forgot one small detail: Ken might actually be a drift master. They were used to beating amateurs and had not faced a real pro in a long time. Nobody warned Ghost that he was playing against the best Korean team, so he was not even trying that hard. If someone had told him the truth, he might have gotten nervous and made mistakes. When the Holy Cow players realized the level of their opponent, they brought out the heavy artillery. And honestly, does firing a bazooka not count as cheating? The giant school bus got trapped from every direction. The maneuverability instantly left the chat and the risk shot up to the sky. Defending was almost impossible, and the only option left was to shoot first. A second later, a rocket launched straight toward our main hero. If he dies right now, I refuse to continue the story about Fat Ben, even if he somehow ends up working in Hollywood. Instead of calmly dying, Ken grabbed the rocket with his bare hands and threw it back. Do not even ask me how he managed to break the laws of physics, because I am still shocked myself. At this point, even I start thinking that he might actually be secretly working with the game developers, because otherwise it is impossible to explain how he keeps surviving situations like this. Anyway, that is how he met the Holy Cow team. Unlike Genome, they were definitely not going to add him as a friend because that meeting clearly did not end with polite conversation. After the fight, Ken looked around and discovered something actually useful. By that time, the rest of the Holy Cow team had already learned about the failure of their teammates. They were clearly craving revenge and waited for Ken to return to the city center. Those arrogant slugs believed too much in their own skills and forgot they were dealing with the biggest psychopath of the 21st century. Instead of arriving by car, Ghost dropped in on a parachute and greeted them with a rocket. The entrance looked pretty good and did not even need extra special effects. The number of participants kept dropping, while the prize of 1,000,000 won still remained on the table. It would be nice to grab that reward, even if it meant eliminating his own viewers. By that moment, a hunt for Ghost had already begun. Shots were fired from every hole, every window, and even from sewer hatches. His intuition kept saving him from death, allowing him to stay one step ahead of even the most precise snipers. At some point, Ken paused for a second and suddenly felt chills down his spine. An unknown enemy threw a grenade at him, and you will never guess what happened next. Instead of running away and hiding, our hero simply smacked the grenade away with a frying pan and instantly wiped out several opponents. The guy clearly lives by his own rules, as if virtual reality belongs entirely to him. Let us skip ahead a little because all these kills start getting repetitive. The number of players dropped faster than subscribers after a terrible stream, and nobody was lucky enough to stay alive after meeting Ghost. He used bare fist pistols and electricity. When he was too lazy to fight, he simply tossed grenades and watched the city sink into flames. Some viewers had already fallen asleep, while the ones who stayed demanded more drama. As for the professional players from the Holy Cow team, they would remember this day for the rest of their lives. Today they were completely humiliated and dragged face first through the dirt. Their teacher showed up to check their progress and almost had a heart attack. He had never experienced such humiliation, especially since, until now, it seemed that his students were the best in Korea. But after watching Ghost fight for just a few minutes, the master himself turned into a fan. The mentor tried to encourage his students and told them not to lose hope. At the same time, he clearly came up with something right after watching Ghost's stream. As for Ken, he calmly returned to the real world after claiming the main prize of the tournament. It is not hard to guess what happened the day after Ghost's next victory. The internet literally exploded, and now nobody doubted that this guy could succeed in more than just one game. Of course, the new editor Ben invited into the team also helped a lot. He is some old friend Ben met back in college. Everyone calls him Madman, and honestly that is pretty much all anyone knows about him. But even while staying in the shadows, his highlight edits brought many subscribers. Now the only thing left was to wait for the first collaboration stream with Genome. By the way, I almost forgot to mention that the collaboration streams are called Anatomy of a Master. A famous master visits the show and demonstrates his skills. Both sides benefit from these streams because they not only exchange experience but also share their subscribers. If the stream becomes extremely viral, the internet will discuss it for weeks. The experienced streamer immediately introduced Ghost to his viewers. Ken shared a few stories about himself and promised to gladly share his experience. Watching their conversation from the outside, it almost looks like they are old friends. It feels as if they spent their entire childhood together and understand each other without words. Ken even revealed some of his past stats, and it turned out this guy is one of the best players in the entire country. He breaks records and finishes games faster than viewers can even understand what happened. The conversation raised the hype, and that means it was time to move to practice. They immediately jumped into a survival game and even decided to use the same visual style. Genome gifted his guest a new suit in which Ken looks like Hitman himself. Now the two of them will fight against 98 killers who are desperate to win. Of course, after losing their first encounter, Genome wanted to show himself in a better light. He planned to lead his guest and personally eliminate most of the enemies. But problems could appear because of stream snipers who constantly hunt popular stars. These players do not care about missions or completing games because they only come to eliminate the local superstar. Because of that, problems may appear, so it is absolutely necessary to work as a team. They agreed not to steal the spotlight and to support each other. Who knows, maybe their story will resemble the friendship between Iron Man and Captain America. This time things became even more interesting. These guys had never fought inside the labyrinth before, and nearby lies a green forest where bushes hide not only monsters but also dangerous killers. Everything started successfully, and very soon the streamers reached the city. Here they could expand their weapon collection and stock up on ammo. Another viewer proposed a new mission where every shotgun kill gives an additional reward. Even though the shotgun is considered a slow weapon, money makes it worth using to the fullest. By the way, I have noticed something interesting about our hero. He seems to go crazy whenever money is involved. I would even place a bet that for an extra $100 he would easily turn his friend Ben into a grilled burger. Meanwhile, viewers noticed that Genome could not keep up with his guest. He kept falling behind and his reactions clearly were not fast enough. If Ken had not been there, the channel owner might have already lost his aura of invincibility. The shotgun solves problems just as effectively as a lawyer's diploma. Ghost's reaction speed already made local viewers love him just as much as Genome. He delivered headshots so quickly that it felt like he was born to play Counter-Strike. And the most interesting part is that he had no intention of stopping because time is money. Next, they had to return to the forest closer to the labyrinth. This area gathered the largest number of players fighting over rare artifacts. It could be a defensive helmet, a bulletproof vest, or even sneakers that boost speed. But no matter how much ordinary players dream about these items, the artifacts always end up in Ghost's hands. Of course, you can drop to your knees and beg for mercy, but that does not guarantee survival. Ken loves killing for money and never refuses the thrill of bloodlust. Strangely enough, this behavior does not scare the viewers away. He is ready to shoot unprotected players in the back and still receive endless compliments from fans. Our hero has some unbelievable aura and charisma, and in this suit he even reminds me of Thomas Shelby, at least the miniature version of him. With every enemy they eliminated, the friendship between Genome and Ken grew stronger. They understood each other so well that sometimes they even managed to dance mid-battle. After that, the streamers jumped into an off-road vehicle and drove wherever their eyes led them. There was no real plan. Everything relied on intuition and pure entertainment for the viewers. At the same time, we should not forget that originally in the match there were more than 6 stream snipers. These guys were hiding patiently, waiting to strike from behind, and if they were not prepared, the fun would end instantly. Suddenly, a massive transformer vehicle rushed toward them at full speed, and the only way to stop it was with grenades. Genome had completed similar missions before, so he knew exactly what to do. Together with Ken, they started a shootout without even leaving the car. I see situations like this every morning when I get stuck in traffic. At least the viewers were happy even though the streamers almost roasted alive. Honestly, content like this is worth an entire paycheck. Of course, the guys did not stop there, especially Genome. He felt the taste of blood so strongly that he grabbed a machine gun found inside the car. Now this no longer looked like a normal game. From the outside it seemed like 2 hunters had gone out on a wild hunt. The roar of the machine gun was so loud that viewers were literally throwing their headphones off. The opponents in the match had absolutely no chance. They were eliminated without mercy. The most disturbing part was that during the shooting you could clearly hear the laughter of two maniacs enjoying the chaos. The audience had never seen Genome like this before. Tonight this guy truly lost himself in the action. Soon they eliminated more than 20 players and received a notification that the zone was shrinking again. The space was getting smaller and smaller, which meant the stream snipers would soon leave their hiding spots. The moment Ken thought about that, a chilling aura of fear froze his body. Behind them came the roar of powerful engines as cars started jumping down from cliffs. From the outside it looked like the filming of another racing blockbuster. Internet trolls had received the right to kill and believed they had finally found their dream job. Those fools had no idea what would happen once they faced Genome. The pickup turned out to be too slow and the fans demanded blood. The streamers are used to entertaining their viewers, so they immediately got to work. All they had to do was stop the car and jump out while it was still moving. The internet trolls clearly were not ready for that, especially not for shotgun blasts. Their pathetic little pistols looked like toys compared to real weapons. But even a shotgun is nothing compared to a blazing machine gun. When Genome joined the fight, even Chinese fireworks looked boring next to him. Still, it was better not to relax too much, because one wrong move and you could get wrecked. Another enemy vehicle had prepared for this battle. They pushed the pedal to the floor and started firing without hesitation. Now there was no doubt these were stream snipers who had waited for the perfect moment to strike. In that case, Ghost himself stepped into the spotlight because he had long dreamed about making a loud statement. If stream snipers wanted war, then war is exactly what they would get. After several minutes of savage fighting, the battle ended with a confident victory for Genome and Ghost. Their next stop was the center of the electric field, where the danger was even greater. A sniper was already there, waiting for the perfect moment to eliminate the local superstars. He was working together with Newton, the player known as the Giant Slayer. This streamer earned his nickname thanks to his ability to eliminate targets without failure. Almost nothing is known about Newton except that for years he has hunted the strongest players. Many consider him the most dangerous stream sniper alive, the kind of opponent you would rather avoid. Our hero still had no idea what kind of threat was hiding in this location. At this point there was practically a sign on his back saying, "Try to kill me if you can." The friends kept having fun, although the rain slightly ruined the mood. During the thunder and lightning, Newton finally stepped out of his hiding place. Only a moment later, Ken received a notification that Genome had been killed. He immediately realized that someone extremely powerful had joined the fight, and now the jokes were over. Newton dreamed about turning Ghost into nothing more than a pawn. He wanted to kill Ken in front of all his viewers and do it with style. The idea sounded solid, but every desire has its price. We have already seen many arrogant fools who believed they could defeat Ghost. But when a man possesses divine abilities and can see through the world around him, he becomes almost impossible to destroy. Besides, Ken had spent enough time sharpening his skills and adapting to the virtual world. He moved fast and smoothly, like a cat sliding across wet asphalt and easily escaping danger. Newton had already smelled blood and accelerated. The rain did not bother him at all. In fact, it only made the hunt more exciting. The viewers flooded the chat with comments as if they themselves were standing on the battlefield. Ghost kept dodging shots while carefully counting the bullets in his opponent's weapon. He was waiting for the moment when Newton would have to reload and become vulnerable. Ken even decided to entertain the audience and started deflecting shots with his own shotgun. Neutral viewers called him insane, while his fans were not even surprised. The moment Newton ran out of bullets, the powerful shotgun instantly aimed at him. Ken could have ended the fight right there, but something did not go according to plan. Maybe he slipped, maybe he simply wanted to enjoy the moment longer. Either way, Newton closed the distance, pulled out a machete, and decided to demonstrate how fighters from Mexican gangs settle their battles. Now that was a real fight, not all those pistols and long-distance shots. Personally, I prefer old-school battles where opponents draw cold steel and try to slice each other apart. In fights like that, you can almost feel the spirit of ancient knights and forgotten eras. Unfortunately, Ghost does not care about my opinion, so he pulled out the shotgun again and quickly solved the problem. When a machete faces a powerful shotgun, the result is always predictable. After the victory, all that remained was to say a quick prayer and thank the fans for their donations. After respawning, the friends regrouped and secured confident victories in the remaining 4 matches. Their combined rating shattered every record, while the number of viewers kept climbing every second. The collaboration stream turned into a real sensation, even though not long ago these two were rivals. Now they were practically best friends, generating hype like the Paul brothers. After the massive success, Genome immediately promised his fans a second stream in the future. While the viewers impatiently waited for the continuation, the new friends celebrated their victory. They invited every team member to enjoy delicacies from a local restaurant. Everything was top tier, and I am not just talking about the food and drinks. Every member of Perfect Team enjoyed the rare chance to relax and feel that they were part of something bigger than simple streaming. They chatted about random nonsense, and on that day, thoughts mattered more than words. Genome finally opened up and showed he was just a pleasant guy who was fun to spend time with. During streams he creates the image of a villain, but in real life he remains cheerful and friendly. They agreed to continue working together and supporting each other, because it is not only profitable but also fun. By the way, Genome spent more than 5 years searching for the right team. In that sense, our main hero was much luckier because he has known his partner since childhood. Another funny thing happened that night. Only after finishing a bottle of sake did they finally reveal their real names to each other. Maybe that is the true magic of streaming, becoming friends while still staying anonymous. The more alcohol they drank, the more honest the conversation became. Genome admitted that he liked the personality of his new friend. After all, a person with great skills who does not ignore the people around him is extremely rare. No matter what happened, Ken always cared about his partner and never acted like a selfish player. Looking after others just to make the stream enjoyable is a rare thing, especially in the modern world. By the way, these drunk geniuses talked so much that they almost missed some pleasant news. Very soon a massive gaming event will happen, and Ghost has been invited there as an MVP. The company Triple G personally sent him a letter inviting him to a meeting at their main office. Besides Genome and Ken, the other participants are still unknown, but either way it should be fun. Now people expect huge achievements from Ken because he managed to defeat Newton. That crazy streamer obsessed with victory had long made everyone used to his constant wins. Now that he finally lost, the internet has gone insane and everyone wants a rematch. Newton's fans in particular look extremely aggressive and are hating on everyone they see. Even Genome had to listen to a few unpleasant comments even though he had nothing to do with it. In short, sooner or later that stream sniper will return and we will definitely witness round 2. But for now the focus is preparing for the event and meeting the developers. After returning home, Ben suddenly had far too much work and practically slept at his computer. No matter what anyone says, besides his love for nuggets and french fries, this guy actually knows how to work. He produces excellent videos, and thanks to that, Ken keeps climbing the career ladder. His battle with Newton broke every record, and the subscribers clearly loved it. Now Ghost's fanbase keeps growing even though he only recently started his career. If we talk about trends right now, the internet is waiting for the potential rematch between Newton and Ken. At some point, Ben finally collapsed from exhaustion. This guy clearly needs an IV filled with cola and chicken nuggets to revive him. The moment he hears conversations like that, he instantly wakes up again. Since everyone is already gathered, they decided to discuss the upcoming negotiations with Triple G. The problem is that this event will happen in real time, which means there is no anonymity protection. Everyone is used to the fact that in virtual reality streamers remain anonymous. This time everything will be completely different, and hiding behind a mask will not be possible. Judging by his reaction, Ken really dislikes that idea. He would rather not let fans know his real name yet. After all, he can sense people's intentions and understands that fan admiration can sometimes turn into something disturbing. For example, phone calls in the middle of the night with heavy breathing in the receiver. On the other hand, he should already be used to idiots in real life. Back in school, he constantly had problems with bullies who mocked him after one of his attacks in the street. They called Ken a shaman and even insulted his grandmother, even though she had done nothing wrong. If he managed to overcome all those problems, then a few crazy fans will not break him now. By the way, Manager Park created all the necessary emojis. Now VIP subscribers feel extra special. But choosing the right emojis turned out to be much harder than expected. The guys spent an eternity discussing them and still could not reach a final agreement. After finishing all these tasks, they finally began planning their meeting with Triple G. This would be the second promotional contact with the developer, so they needed to treat it with maximum seriousness. Before the meeting, the manager and the streamer agreed to stay calm. First, they needed to listen to the proposal and of course settle the money question. Ken looked relaxed and even slightly amused. As for the manager, he kept smiling, but it was obvious how nervously Park shuffled the documents in his hands. After reaching the top floor, our hero finally met the representatives of Triple G. At first glance, they looked like cheerful guys who simply wanted to create quality content. It was even a little surprising that 3 directors from different departments personally came to greet them. They seemed extremely interested and immediately explained they wanted to release a new event mode called Time Warfare. Now, instead of simple battles between players, the game would include additional monsters with high-precision weapons. It was clear these developers were proud of their idea and eager to bring it to life. But in order for the robots to become real threats, they needed proper training. The company's proposal was that Ken would share his personal combat stats so they could improve the robot's skills. On one hand, there was nothing unusual about this, and many streamers participate in similar programs. But the young genius was not very eager to share his stats, and convincing him would require serious money. The people at Triple G were true enthusiasts and were ready to offer a generous reward. After listening to everything, the friends decided to take a short break and discuss the proposal. The manager quickly explained how the robot training process would work. Ghost would have to demonstrate his best combat techniques and defensive skills. The payment, however, did not look very impressive, and besides, one of the executives gave off a strange dark aura. That was a good enough reason to decline the offer. The company representatives could hardly believe that a simple collaboration would collapse on the first day of negotiations. Now they would have to explain to their boss why everything had gone wrong. The development director of Triple G, Mr. Park Sigan, does not tolerate rejection. He ordered them to offer Ken any amount of money just to convince the young genius everyone on the internet was talking about. It was obvious the director understood business and knew the psychology of streamers. Just double the offer and every excuse disappears instantly. Mr. Siginier already saw how profitable the partnership could become, so he had no intention of being cheap. He was ready to spend serious money. One glance at his office was enough for Ken to smell the scent of success. He had not been wrong when he rejected the first offer because he knew the price would go up. A new contract had already arrived in his inbox worth more than $20,000. Not bad money just to show a few combat moves in a ridiculous suit, although honestly even Donald Trump might envy skills like that. Now he could calmly return home with his head held high and try something new. The very next day, the first teaser trailer for the second stream between Genome and Ghost was released. Even Steven Spielberg would envy the script because everything was designed to attract the maximum number of viewers. People could barely wait for the second stream to begin. This was especially true for people who had not seen the first part but had heard all kinds of stories about brutal kills, teamwork, and action. Right after the trailer, several thousand extra subscribers joined the channel. The second part had only just started when Genome immediately explained why his guest was such a genius. The secret was that his brain worked differently, which allowed Ken to always stay one step ahead. This guy does not just rely on intuition, he practically sees the future. It becomes especially clear when he shoots at moving targets. Ordinary streamers struggle with tasks like that. The moment a person starts moving, hitting them becomes extremely difficult. But Ghost perfectly calculates the changes of a body in space and fires exactly where the target will be a second later. That is probably why he keeps insane accuracy even while driving a car. Judging by Ken's reaction, he had never thought about it that way, although it was nice to hear about his own genius from the outside. The viewers also loved the breakdown and immediately showered the streamers with generous donations. Now the audience demanded new action, more blood, and shattered dreams. Judging by their reactions, Ken and Genome were more than happy to give them exactly that, but first they needed to review the footage from the previous battle. To attract the maximum audience, they had to remind everyone about the fight with Newton. Oh yes, that topic had become the most discussed lately, and people went crazy whenever it was mentioned. Everyone was used to hearing stories about Newton defeating every talented newcomer and preventing rising stars from securing the spotlight. Now the local genius had finally broken through the stream sniper, and the viewers practically worshipped him. Ghost even decided to add more fuel to the fire and declared that if he ever met Newton again, he would destroy him once more. Donations started pouring in huge numbers because people absolutely love trash talk. Ghost even agreed to reveal his cards and explained how he managed to defeat Newton. The key was the direction of the gaze, which most streamers do not even pay attention to. During battle, he sees everything like slow motion and notices every tiny detail. The moment he sees where the opponent is looking, he immediately understands how to defend himself. In the end, that awareness becomes the foundation of victory, even though from the outside nobody understands what actually happened. Right after those words, one viewer almost lost his mind. It turned out Newton himself had been watching the stream and started dropping massive donations just to ask personal questions to the guest. There has long been an unspoken rule that with a big donation, a viewer can request almost anything. That is why most of the questions about the battle between Ken and Newton were asked by the stream sniper himself. Of course, all that talk was interesting, but the audience wanted spectacle and had grown tired of endless discussion. This time they needed real intrigue, and it seemed Ghost and Genome were ready to deliver it. For that reason, they even showed up wearing brand new outfits. The stream would be held live with no recordings or replays saved. Viewers who paid serious money were finally about to learn the past of Ghost. He admitted that he used to be just a paper salesman, and not long ago he was barely surviving in this brutal world. Then he discovered virtual reality and realized it was his chance to unlock his potential. Viewers always enjoy learning the past of their idol, so later they can write that they knew him before the fame. After that, the audience kept donating and asking anything they wanted, but the quality of those questions was terrible. I honestly do not even want to repeat them because most of them were pure nonsense. Some people were ready to pay just to ask whether Ken prefers ketchup or mayonnaise. Sadly, there are way too many weirdos like that and almost no truly interesting questions. Ghost answered everything he could and finally asked to start the next game. At last they reached the main topic and introduced the game Elden Soul. The name alone sounded far more epic than Biocrisis, so things were about to get interesting. Before the game started, a classic lottery began on Genome's channel. If Ken won, he would receive 100 subscribers from his friend. But if the hero lost, he would have to sacrifice some of his own subscribers instead. Somehow this guy even learned to cheat luck and feel fortune like it was a living bird. He easily won the lottery and Genome's confidence completely disappeared. Now Genome had to give away his subscribers while Ken prepared for the next stream. He wished the viewers good luck and promised to begin the stream the next morning. That sly trickster deliberately delayed the game launch to attract maximum attention to his channel. Strangely enough, it worked, although the angry comments kept piling up. The bigger the hype, the bigger the money. That is simply how show business works. The subscriber count kept rising every minute, and even the team struggled with the workload. Ghost told the editor to get some rest so he would be ready for tomorrow's stream. The next day, a brand new stream would appear, and the content would need to be cut into highlights. For the first time in a week, Ken returned to his own channel, where viewers were already tired of seeing him on other streams. He entered a new game where everything around him looked destroyed and broken. Monstrous creatures and undead enemies were normal here, just like the comment section under a livestream. The goal of the game was to restore the era of humanity, and for that the hero had to collect fragments of a lost soul and fulfill his destiny. First, he had to choose a character because that would define his equipment and abilities. Ken decided to become a Seeker of Origins, a warrior who had lost everything and started with nothing. He spawned inside a dark dungeon where the damp smell of earth created an uncomfortable atmosphere. It turned out he was standing right next to a graveyard, and the only way to escape was with a single long sword. At last, we can properly dive into the world of virtual reality and see what makes this new game so interesting. A medieval setting already feels refreshing. Now everyone has to get used to shields, spears, arrows, and swords instead of the usual machine guns. On top of that, there are monsters that look like slimy medieval zombies. Ghost did not waste time and immediately started chopping them into tiny pieces before noticing a strange message. The moment he spoke the phrase "smoldering embers in the ashes," the door suddenly opened. The chat behaved unusually calm. It felt like the viewers still did not understand the new game and were trying to figure out what was happening here. Personally, I can calm everyone down because the rules of most games are almost always the same. All you have to do is kill monsters and move forward across the map. It might sound a bit simplified, but that is basically the truth. Ken swung his sword around and quickly adapted to the game interface. Simple kills were not enough, so he decided to burn everything, turning the zombies into crispy buns. After that, he decided to explore a little and entered a large chamber filled with dangerous traps. This was definitely not the time to relax, and even the noobs in chat understood that. Wealthy viewers offered some money for completing risky challenges. It looked like someone wanted to add spice to an otherwise slow start of the raid. Ken happily accepted the challenge and showed that he could feel comfortable in absolutely any reality. At one point, things became so easy that he even threw a monster on his back and started doing squats. Anything for new subscribers who crave entertainment. Soon he finally escaped the dungeon and felt the fresh wind of freedom. But sometimes freedom is far more dangerous than it seems. One wrong step and you can fall into the abyss or become food for monsters. Extreme caution was necessary because this new location was still a mystery. First, Ghost returned to the castle to grab some fire and light up the area. Then he pushed off the ground and jumped higher than his favorite superhero. The abyss failed to swallow him and he confidently reached the other side. There he discovered a small cave inside which stood a knight. A powerful aura surrounded the warrior, yet he did not seem hostile. All it took was a simple touch and the knight began glowing before handing over his soul. The same thing happens to any shy guy when he falls in love for the first time. Ghost can collect the souls of others and use them for his own purposes. He approached a stone tablet and activated the soul he had obtained. Most of the game revolves around collecting fragments of a lost soul and restoring forgotten memories. At the same time, he must battle monsters and avoid death, which might prove difficult. The moment he stepped into the graveyard, he felt a wave of dead energy and noticed a man in a cloak. The old man muttered strange words as if even he did not understand them himself. It almost sounded like he was trying to sell a personal success course, but Ken politely declined. I did not even know graveyards hired undertakers the size of Thanos. Apparently Ghost was not bothered by that at all and fought as if they were the same size. The exchange of blows was extremely intense and any careless movement could lead to disaster. The Undertaker attacked with all his strength as if he had hated humans since the beginning of time. In response, Ken swung his sword, perfectly defended himself, and showed unbelievable acrobatics. With skills like that, he should have been performing in a circus instead of selling paper, but that no longer matters. The viewers finally felt that this was exactly the content they wanted. Close combat with a gigantic opponent is always exciting, especially in a brand new world. At some point, Ken finally managed to wound his opponent and earned loud applause. But instead of finishing the fight, he suddenly ran away to grab a massive sword. That weapon had caught his eye earlier when he first entered the area, and he thought the Undertaker deserved a gift. Honestly, it is impossible to understand how he came up with such thoughts, but it looked interesting. Instead of killing the enemy, he handed him the weapon, and strangely enough, it worked. He had already guessed the Undertaker was a natural swordsman who had been forced to fight with a shovel instead of a blade. The giant man with tears in his eyes began remembering the past. Once he really had been a knight who lost his memories. Now he finally returned to his roots and challenged Ken to a proper duel. When both opponents hold weapons, the result becomes completely unpredictable. Defeating a giant with a shovel was one thing, but now that same giant was swinging a massive blade. Simple acrobatics would not help anymore. It required not only defense but constant pressure, angle changes, and distance control like a professional boxer. Ken balanced perfectly between attack and defense and once again cornered the Undertaker. The chat froze, waiting for the outcome, and even the haters stayed silent. A devastating strike was coming, and the decision had to be made instantly. Ghost chose to attack into the strike so his blow would become impossible to block. Only such a move could lead to victory against a powerful, experienced warrior. His strike shattered the Undertaker's defense and secured the mission victory. After that, the fallen warrior calmly handed over his soul like a gentleman, leaving the stage with dignity. The complete soul of the Undertaker was a valuable artifact that could always be sold or exchanged for something useful. Escaping the graveyard was successful, but the question remained, what comes next? The hero moved into the forest and noticed something resembling a sacred altar. When he approached, he saw a beautiful girl who had long ago been cursed. Her soul had shattered into fragments, and now she existed only as a broken echo. She was known as the Mist Witch, who had abandoned both memory and body. She even began flirting with the hero as if she had not seen a man in ages. Ken's intuition told him to offer her the Undertaker's soul, and he decided to risk it. In return, she granted him a technique called Dragon Ascension. Now he could partially control the wind and use it during combat. That ability would not defeat the final villain, but it could definitely break a few branches. During the conversation, Ghost asked why the witch did not simply create a new body. It turned out her curse chained her to the altar because beyond its borders lived a forest giant who collected the bodies of monsters and the dead. Only after the giant was destroyed could the witch finally escape her curse. Helping her sounded like a good idea, so Ken agreed without hesitation. He ventured deeper into the forest to find the giant responsible for all this trouble. Along the way, he encountered a massive centipede and tore it apart using only the power of wind. With every kill, he gained souls and increased his strength. Now he needed to focus because at that very moment the giant was already moving toward him. Every flower in that forest belonged to the monster who hated uninvited guests. The giant of evil spirits finally revealed his enormous body and challenged the unknown warrior standing before him. That means it is time to grab some chips and cold drinks because a real massacre is about to begin. The giant attacked immediately without any warning. It was obvious he was serious and had no intention of sharing his territory. Ghost, meanwhile, was trying to test his control over the wind. After mastering the new element, he wanted to fight using unusual methods. Ordinary kills had already become boring, so it was time for something new. If the wind was combined with dragonfire, the result could exceed all expectations. He clearly remembered that the witch had given him some advice and revealed a few magical secrets. Now he only had to control the element and guide it in the right direction. From the outside it looked very impressive, but the real question was whether it would work. After all, he was not fighting a regular giant but a monster with a glowing green core near its heart. That green core seemed to grant special power, and even allowed the creature to summon smaller monsters. The giant had an enormous health pool, and fighting it longer than 10 minutes would be a serious mistake. Speed was required, powerful strikes were needed, and maximum aggression. After several exchanges, the giant lost its outer shell and turned into a massive skeleton. Now it was no longer as protected as before, and its attacks were far less terrifying. Since I am narrating this story, I will allow myself to give the hero a small piece of advice. Just wait for the perfect moment, then strike directly at the soul. But knowing Ken, I would not be surprised if he decided to entertain the audience and chat with viewers during the battle. This guy broke every rule long ago, and that is exactly why people love watching him. Meanwhile, the creatures of the forest still could not understand why everything around them flashed with green and orange explosions. The viewers told Ken to speed things up and finally finish the fight. If he wanted to complete the mission, earn some money, and free the witch, he had to stop fooling around. The giant became furious and unleashed its strongest attack. If we could see its face, it would probably look shocked because the strike not only failed to kill Ghost but forced him to strike back. As a result, the giant that had tormented the forest for years was destroyed, and its soul now belonged to Ghost. The remaining bones could be left to the dogs, while the soul would free the witch from her prison. Long ago, the giant had helped plants grow, but then he apparently watched every season of Game of Thrones and lost his mind. Now, thanks to Ghost, the witch was finally free and could leave the sacred altar. She asked for just a fragment of the giant's soul so she could create a physical body. Full reincarnation was still far away, so for now she would exist as a small spirit. From now on, Ken would become her teacher, and in return she promised to become his loyal assistant. After completing the mission, they immediately traveled toward the capital of the kingdom to continue collecting fragments of lost souls. This was the perfect moment to say goodbye to the viewers. The new stream did not break every record, but the view count was still impressive. People loved the medieval setting and actively discussed the Undertaker's past and the witch's tragic fate. Despite the success, Ken had no intention of relaxing and decided to train seriously. To succeed, he needed to stay in top physical condition. That meant proper nutrition and plenty of protein. At this point, it almost feels like I am advertising some Arnold Schwarzenegger fitness product instead of telling Ken's story. Our hero ran to the nearest supermarket and bought several tubs of protein powder. Someone should tell him that if he wants to attract girls, he should make the Forbes list instead of just building muscles. After calling his friends, he learned that someone had challenged him. One of the most famous Korean streamers, Eclipse, decided to challenge him. It all happened because he also played in the medieval world and never managed to figure out that the Undertaker used to be a knight. Eclipse is famous for his love of medieval games and his huge number of subscribers. This guy never shows his face and always fights wearing armor. A duel with such a knight could be very useful because behind him stands a massive audience. Here Ken definitely needed advice from Genome, who had already done joint streams with Eclipse. Genome, who had just woken up, honestly admitted that the knight has incredible experience. The whole problem is that Eclipse has been playing online games for more than 6 years straight. On top of that, he specializes in close combat and handles a sword perfectly. After the conversation, Ken froze when he noticed a photo of a girl on the stand. She looked strangely familiar, as if long ago he had already felt her aura during a duel. At first he thought it was just his imagination because he had never fought female streamers before. But his intuition kept telling him that the girl named Nara carried the same energy as Newton. If Newton really turns out to be this beauty, then I will definitely finish this story to the end. Anyway, now is not the time to think about girls because the stream must begin. Ghost never refuses duels and gladly accepted the challenge. But before fighting Eclipse, he still had to finish some business in the medieval world. After returning, Ken greeted the witch and looked around. It felt like he had not entered the capital, but the ruins of an ancient city. On top of that, a terrible scene was happening nearby, connected with murder. Right now, a knight was about to turn a miserable slave into a cold corpse. This is what happens when an executor fails to fulfill his duty. The witch began telling ancient legends which were not easy to understand. If you shorten her confusing story, it all comes down to a simple conflict between factions. Humanity split apart, and if Ken does not help the side of light, darkness will cover everything. He did not want to interfere in someone else's conflict, and decided to watch from the side. The knight failed his task anyway because he did not sense the approaching danger, and soon became a cold corpse himself. Apparently the dead here are ordinary zombies who love to eat carrion. From the outside, everything looked extremely creepy, which meant the number of viewers kept growing. The undead left bloody traces, and Ken decided to activate Sherlock Holmes mode. He rushed to catch those horrible creatures and then show his power. Do not even think that this battle will last long, because today Ken has no time to waste. One fiery blast was enough to burn the undead to ashes and silence the haters. Thanks to the victory, he managed to take the recruiter's soul and remained without a single scratch. After that, he headed to the Night Order, where he was greeted without unnecessary formalities. He had to show the recruiter's soul so the local defenders would allow the guest to pass. Huge doors opened before him and his heart started beating faster from excitement. Inside the castle, he was welcomed by the commander of the Night Order named Blondo. He thanked him for returning the soul, although sad news erased the smile from his face. If Ken came to this castle, it means he is ready to help. Right now, his soul is shattered into many fragments, but that does not mean he cannot restore the lost pieces. Long ago, Blondo himself had been shattered until he managed to return to his normal state. Once Blondo also wanted to save the world, but unfortunately his skills were not enough for that. He asks Ken to gather all his courage and help the kingdom restore its former glory. In the past, the knights depended on the influence of the Arbiter, but recently everything changed. The Arbiter disappeared somewhere and has not contacted anyone, so people do not even know what to think. Maybe he simply decided to play Dota and vanished for half a year. This is a classic story with young guys who never managed to find their place in life. In short, if Ken does not help the kingdom, the knights will become corpses and the whole world will fall into darkness. In fact, nothing complicated. All he needs to do is kill monsters, collect soul fragments, and lead the light faction to greatness. Blondo is even ready to sacrifice his own artifacts like some info guru selling the last charm of success. To meet the Arbiter, 2 magic keys are required, otherwise no amount of killing will help. Ken learned everything he wanted and happily said goodbye to the viewers. Lately, he has been looking tired and ends streams at the first good opportunity, even despite the hate coming from the chat. Apparently, a bit of star syndrome made him change, and real life now feels better than the game. Speaking of real life, it is time to remember that his duel with Eclipse is coming soon. Underestimating the opponent could cost him everything, so his friends advise him to prepare. Usually these guys never say anything except obvious advice, but today there is something interesting. The manager was contacted by Metagamer, who wants to buy the broadcast rights for the duel. Now that is interesting because any broadcast means serious money. Apparently the people at Metagamer calculated that they could profit from it and decided to take the risk. At first glance they look like ordinary young guys without much business experience, but that is misleading because they clearly know what they are doing. Ken gladly sold the broadcasting rights, and soon his viewers gathered in front of their screens to witness something special. The battle will be commented by Genome together with a beautiful girl named Shin. Judging by his smile, he was also paid well, otherwise he would have stayed home and not even lifted a finger. The audience doubts Ghost's chances because he has almost no experience. Compared to Eclipse, Ken looks like a child who barely learned to walk. But sometimes those kinds of kids are so talented that even adults cannot stop them. Soon the hosts introduced the main participants, who appeared more dramatically than the Avengers themselves. At first glance it looked like Ghost and the Knight right now would start fighting, but do not grab the popcorn yet. The owners of the broadcast want to squeeze every dollar out of this event, so they prepared something special. The moment the two warriors got ready to fight each other, the atmosphere instantly changed. Portals opened around the arena from which additional players started appearing. That means before Ken and Eclipse try to figure out who is the best, they will have to clear the area and temporarily work together. Honestly, nobody warned about this, but the main hero did not seem surprised at all. He knows that the more hype there is, the more subscribers will come, so there is no reason to refuse the chaos. The medieval warriors pressed back to back and prepared to repel the attacks of the aggressive crowd. Magical beams and explosions quickly painted the arena with bright colors. From the outside, everything looked absolutely spectacular, and the viewers did not even need 3D glasses. From the very first seconds, Ghost felt completely in his element. Now that he possesses the power to control the wind and the fury of fire, his kills look even more spectacular. As for Eclipse, he clearly had no intention of falling behind and started showing techniques that very few players have ever seen. Metagamer is obviously going to make a fortune from this stream because the number of viewers is already smashing records. On top of that, the audience is constantly pushed to vote and place bets just to crank the hype to maximum levels. Every social network is flooded with polls about who will win, and for now Ken remains the clear favorite. He definitely conquered the hearts of the fans, but what about real skill? Fan love alone will never win a battle. Victory demands character, massive experience, and absolute faith in your own power. Once all the extra fighters were wiped out, the moment of the main duel finally arrived. As the more experienced warrior, Eclipse stepped forward, but his opening strike failed to land. Ghost calmly blocked the blow and answered with a mocking grin. After that, he tried to seize the momentum and launched a counterattack. While the fans were busy arguing which of their idols looked cooler on the screen, the streamers were busy trying to read every next move. From the outside, it looked like an angry cat chasing a mouse. But relaxing for even a second would be a fatal mistake because sometimes the mouse turns out to be a mutant. Thanks to his experience, Eclipse knows when to endure an enemy assault and wait for the opponent to burn through stamina. Even so, Ken still managed to land a hit and roasted the knight with a burst of fire. He barely even broke a sweat and at some point thought the fight might end before it truly began. The first round came to an end and the main hero thanked the knight for this priceless experience. There was so much respect between them that it even felt strange. People probably wanted more trash talk, more aggression, and hunger for victory. As if Eclipse heard those thoughts, he rushed into attack at the start of the second round. He knew his massive fan army would never forgive him for losing to a cocky rookie. It felt like a demon had possessed him, and the friendly duel turned into a clash of eternal enemies. Now the knight had no intention of retreating and kept moving forward without hesitation. His sword filled with mana, and every strike felt like getting punched by Mike Tyson himself. This was exactly the kind of battle everyone wanted, because only under such pressure could Ghost finally lose control of the situation. And honestly, we had never seen him lose that famous smirk and become this serious. Even Genome started shifting from foot to foot and could barely hide his tension. Of course he was Ken's friend and clearly rooting for him. The chat also fell silent, waiting to see how it would end. The tension kept rising with every passing minute, and everyone could feel it in the air. Yet Ken never lost confidence in his power and kept pushing forward. His swordsmanship kept evolving even though he lacked years of experience. On the training arena, two warriors with completely different backgrounds clashed, but inside the battle itself, the gap was barely noticeable. And when it comes to pure talent, Ghost clearly operates on a completely different level. Because of that, he secured another victory, and the chat instantly exploded with applause. The main hero did not rush to celebrate or dance from happiness. First of all, he showed respect and made it clear that exchanging experience meant more than victory. Of course, the viewers and Eclipse himself could not ignore such honor. The experienced knight held no grudge against his opponent, although he promised to grow stronger and take revenge. The view counters reached their absolute peak, and donations were flying in at the speed of light. Right in that intense moment, a portal suddenly opened, and the bloodthirsty Newton stepped out of it. Absolutely nobody expected this, because today was supposed to feature only one duel. But if the audience wanted more, and Newton was ready to fight, then why stop the show? Ken was slightly exhausted, so Eclipse wanted to step forward and fight instead of the winner. But the viewers in chat made it clear that they were interested only in a clash of the undefeated. This was already a completely different level, and predicting anything became difficult. Newton immediately launched into attack and did not even think about defense. His skills were undeniably impressive, but there was one subtle problem. Because of his overwhelming aggression, the armored warrior became far too predictable. Because of that, Ken even wanted to stop the duel since he saw no intrigue in it. The viewers were shocked and begged him to rethink the decision before it was too late. Newton simply could not swallow such an insult and had no intention of stopping. To continue the fight, the veteran streamed sniper had to reveal the face behind the armor. As it turned out, Ken's intuition was correct, and beneath the knight's mask stood a girl. At first glance, she looked fragile, but in reality, her fists were harder than steel. Relaxing even for a second could cost someone their head or something even worse. So no matter how confident Ken felt, he still had to fight seriously to win. For the viewers, the intrigue was perfect because they were not the ones fighting. Even if they already suspected the winner, they still enjoyed watching high-level martial arts. Apparently, nobody ever taught Ken how to approach girls. Instead of giving compliments and inviting her on a date, he answered with fists and brutal strikes. Just do not tell me that this guy watched too many Andrew Tate streams and lost his mind. Well, if everyone wants equality, then this is exactly what equality looks like. In terms of technique, Newton was not inferior, but she lacked the raw power. Ghost simply had to rely on his physical advantage and push the battle toward victory. That part caused him no trouble, and once again his balance filled up with donations. As for Newton, whose real name is Yoon Nara, she returned to the training hall and immediately began correcting her mistakes. Nara never believed in talent and always relied on relentless hard work. The memory of this defeat disgusted her, and she promised to return much stronger next time. After the battle, the champion was asked to say a few words and comment on the victory. The representatives of the company that bought the rights to broadcast the duel felt serious pressure. Everything seemed to go smoothly, but the boss looked far too grim. Everyone in the room felt nervous and had no idea what to expect. Then happy cheers suddenly exploded, which meant everything went perfectly. The board of directors was extremely satisfied with the broadcast and now wants to repeat events like this often. Ken will even be invited for an interview to boost the promotion and create even more hype. Highlight clips from the battle against the knights spread across the entire internet. People have long grown tired of classic gunfire and instead enjoyed the art of close combat. After all, in battles like this, real mastery truly appears because nobody can simply shoot someone in the back. The next day, Ken talked with viewers, received donations, and planned the continuation of his journey through the medieval world. After forming an alliance with the knights, he now needs to obtain a magical jade to gain the chance to meet the arbiter of fate. The local church stands on the opposite side from the knight order. Today, the local knights looked like they watched one motivational video and suddenly decided to save the world. They repeated all kinds of nonsense, saying killing was necessary for humanity's salvation, and behaved like zombies. In situations like this, there is no need to think. You simply draw your sword and cut those creatures apart. Ghost immediately did exactly that, because he never hesitates twice. The moment he sees something dangerous and evil, he instantly switches into full blender mode. The results were impressive, although there was so much blood that any janitor would quit. In the end, he killed all the zombie knights and heard applause from the grateful citizens. Representatives of the church thanked their savior because they had already lost hope. One of the priests even invited Ken inside the church so he could meet Saint Sophia. The witch also wanted to enter, but the protective barrier refused to let her pass. Some unknown force clearly wanted her to stay outside, and there was nothing that could be done. She gave Ken a few pieces of advice and wished him good luck. Once inside the church, he immediately noticed the smell of burning wax candles and the incredible beauty of the interior. He was told that the great knight Eldon defeated monstrous creatures and began the era of humanity. He sacrificed his own soul to create the so-called saviors who fought monsters. Because of that, a golden age of humanity began, but the happiness did not last long. After hearing the story, Ken stepped into the chapel and noticed a beautiful girl. The viewers in chat instantly tensed up because everyone knew Ken has zero skill when it comes to women. No aura radiated from Saint Sophia, which felt extremely strange. Ken did not drag out the conversation and immediately said he needed the jade as payment for saving the church. Sophia was not against rewarding the handsome warrior, but she still had her own conditions. Not far from here lives a dragon, which at any moment could destroy the city. If Ken wants the jade, he must first defeat that massive monster. Ghost activated his instinct ability, and the feeling inside told him to take the risk. Which means the snow dragon will die today, and even the animal protection squads will not be able to stop it. Without wasting time, Ken put on warm clothes and headed straight into the frozen mountains. After scanning the area, he found absolutely nothing, so he had to activate his magical abilities. Somewhere around here, a massive monster was hiding, and judging by the situation, it clearly skipped every camouflage class. During the search, our hero found a dead Yeti and even thought about calling the crew from National Geographic. Sadly, the full documentary about the life of the snow monster would have to wait for another day. Out of nowhere, a gigantic dragon appeared, and judging by the smell from its mouth, it had not brushed its teeth for centuries. Ken almost wanted to offer it chewing gum, but the dragon rejected modern innovation. If the monster wants to stay far away from civilization, then so be it. The battle started instantly, and an ordinary sword was clearly not enough. Ghost remembered a bunch of movies and decided to create a magical lasso. Unfortunately, things went wrong because the dragon showed that its toxic breath was only part of its abilities. Inside its jaws gathered terrifying magic capable of reducing any hunter to atoms. Ken had to sweat hard just to dodge those attacks. After that, Ghost launched a counterstrike, but the moment his blade hit the dragon's scales, it shattered. For an ordinary streamer, losing a weapon in a dragon fight would equal death. But when it comes to Ken, nobody would be surprised if he pulled another ace from his sleeve. This guy no longer needs steel because he has already mastered basic magic. Now even a monster like a dragon does not intimidate the main hero. All his inner energy poured into the broken blade, heating it until it glowed like a miniature sun. The dragon's scales could not withstand that power, and the beast received the final strike of its life. Inside the nest there was nothing except the armor of fallen knights and bad memories. Long ago, this place belonged to a small elite squad that trained together with dragons. After finishing their training, they protected the kingdom until the unit was disbanded after a tragedy when the dragons attacked their own masters. The souls of the dead knights were still here, and Ken could ask them what happened. It turned out the knights came here at Sophia's request to eliminate the monsters. She gave them a magical jade that drove the dragons insane and forced them to attack their own allies. Now it became clear why Ken felt nothing when he looked at Sophia. The holy woman was actually a fake, just like the jade she held in her hand. All this time the dragon suffered because it was forced to kill its own master. Now the old companions will finally meet again in heaven and forget their grudges. It is weak consolation, but nothing can change the past anymore. The only thing left is to return to the church and find out who Sophia really is and what she wants. The witch explained that the real Sophia had long ago become an old grandmother. If the woman Ken met looked young, then it must have been an illusion. The witch advised him to inform Blondo because an experienced knight always knows the right path forward. Because of Sophia's cruel actions, not only the knights died, but also the dragons who had done nothing wrong. When Blondo heard the story, a cold shiver ran down his spine. He promised to station troops around the church and grant Ken full authority to deal with the situation. Before heading out on the mission, Ken decided to use the dragon scales he obtained and forge himself a brand new weapon. After all, his old sword was gone and the time had come to replace that rusty blade with something truly legendary. Nobody expected this guy to suddenly reveal the hidden talent of a master blacksmith. At this point, it almost feels like he was secretly raised by a clan of dwarves who taught him all these forging skills. After sweating through the process, he finally crafted exactly what he wanted. The blade turned out insanely dense and razor sharp, and now all that remained was to pour magical power into it. In his hands now rested a unique sword forged from dragon scales, which meant every enemy on the map should start writing their farewell letters. The only thing left was learning how to swing such a heavy weapon and land the strike exactly where it mattered. Before facing the real battle, he decided to test the blade first. Even though it was the very first swing Ken made with this weapon, the result stunned even the veteran viewers watching the stream. After that, he immediately went to meet Sophia and calmly reported that the dragon was dead. She handed him the promised sacred jade as if he did not already know it was a fake. The real artifact should be golden, and the witch had explained that long ago. Ken had no intention of playing the fool, at least not until he gets married. He wanted the truth and demanded to know what Sophia really wanted. Those words clearly did not please her, and she decided to drop the mask. The beautiful girl, who looked perfect for a romantic date, began melting like a wax statue under the blazing Texas sun. A protective barrier suddenly formed around the church, and most of the people inside turned into monsters that attacked the innocent citizens. Nobody expected chaos on this level, and even the children seemed to lose their minds. The priests desperately tried to stabilize the situation, but honestly they had no idea what they were doing. The Knights of the Holy Order attempted to break the barrier, but their efforts were useless. That meant the entire responsibility now rested on the shoulders of the main hero. Since he already forged a dragon-scale sword, there was no reason to delay the slaughter. The civilians hid behind his back while silently watching him carve through the zombies. It was a strange sight because even as blood splashed and limbs flew through the air, the ordinary people smiled and cheered like they were watching a Disney movie. Once the massacre ended, the barrier vanished and the witch finally stepped onto the sacred ground. Ken rushed into the church and saw something enormous that looked like a gigantic egg. The witch had been beside him the entire time and instantly sensed the rising danger. Behind them stood Sophia, but no longer young and beautiful. Instead, she appeared old and shriveled like an ancient relic. Only now did the witch finally reveal her true name. Before them stood Alicia, the daughter and successor of Zaiden, the arbiter of fate. She wished to restore her body and protect humanity from the darkness threatening the world. The old crone immediately made it clear she would never allow that to happen. After that, she started rambling through a long, confusing speech that barely made sense. From what could be understood, the giant egg contained a soul that could become the key to salvation, at least according to the forces of darkness. The massive egg suddenly turned crimson and began glowing with blinding light. Even the viewers watching the stream felt a chill run down their spine. Then the massive egg finally shattered and foul slime spilled across the entire church. Inside the egg were skeletons that instantly came to life and rushed straight at Ghost. With all due respect to these walking bone piles, they were way too weak to stop a warrior this prepared. After all, if the viewers want real suspense, Ken has to face something far more powerful. Soon the slime began forming something truly horrifying, and strangely enough, Ken actually liked the sight. He gave a slight grin, activated his magic skills, and charged forward without hesitation. The guy walked in with a grin like it was just another training session. With all respect, this weird creature simply did not inspire any fear. It looked more like some kind of protective shell with a child hiding inside. Apparently nobody informed the main hero that attacking children might be a bad idea. He aimed his dragon blade at the creature, pouring every drop of mana into a single strike. The chat was already preparing to log off, expecting yet another easy victory. But the moment viewers started accusing Ken of bullying weak enemies, the horrifying creature suddenly resurrected. In just a few seconds, the small child transformed into a gigantic warrior. Now standing before the hero was a knight who looked like a twisted dark version of the reborn Elden. Now that is real drama, not those skinny skeleton guys from earlier. One exchange of blows was enough to realize that this knight possessed terrifying power. And by the way, he could also fight using magic thanks to the golden jade embedded in his chest. That artifact clearly looked like the only weak spot in his defense, and naturally the target was obvious. Ghost switched to defense, carefully studying every movement of the opponent. He kept dodging to study the enemy's skills, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When the opportunity finally arrived, he attacked with full force quickly but completely forgot about precision. At this level, even the smallest mistake gets punished instantly. Instead of grabbing his sword, Ken suddenly started running around the battlefield. Was he really trolling just to entertain the audience? Someone really needed to tell this guy that he might lose his head in the next second if he keeps playing around. Finally, he got serious and drove the dragon blade straight toward the golden jade. The artifact cracked, and with it the monster's life force began collapsing. In the end, victory came thanks to a magical lasso move straight out of a Spider-Man playbook. After taking the hit, the monster exploded and the shockwave threw Ken backward. The creature tried to gather the escaping souls leaking from the shattered golden jade. As a result, the knight transformed into something even more monstrous. It was hard to even describe. It looked like a swarm of disgusting slime creatures merging together into one giant horror. Londo could no longer stand aside and decided to show that he was still a warrior to be reckoned with. After all, he too once lost his soul and fought his way back from the abyss. He attacked together with Ken, and their combined strike created the perfect shockwave. The monster shattered into fragments and the citizens finally breathed again. The protective barrier vanished like smoke, and the cracked jade now rested safely in trustworthy hands. Ken proved his valor through action and earned the full respect of the knights. As a reward, they handed him the golden jade so he could finally complete his destiny. After thanking the knights, Ken immediately headed toward the castle with the massive gates. The sacred jade instantly restored itself and became the key to enter. Elisha looked visibly nervous, like a teenager who forgot to clear their browser history. Meanwhile, the viewers in chat reminded everyone that dawn had already arrived and the stream should probably end. Ghost said goodbye, but one viewer warned him that if he refuses to unite with his allies, he might be heading straight toward the bad ending. The team gathered to grab some good food and talk about everything that just went down. As for the view numbers, everything looked amazing and there was absolutely no reason to worry. The subscriber counter and donation totals kept rising right before their eyes. If the game required support from outside players, it would have made sense to invite a few familiar faces. But Ken decided to do things differently to boost his reputation with the audience. He simply allowed anyone from the stream to join, hoping the fans would help him finish the game. At first glance, the plan looked solid, but this is usually how the dumbest ideas are born. Ken had already spoken with Alicia and received permission to summon 10 helpers. He told the chat that only players with high stats would be allowed to enter the game. The fool never even considered that stream snipers would arrive faster than freeloaders running toward free food. Every single one of them carried a dark aura, and Ken immediately realized help was the last thing they planned to offer. From the very beginning, it should have been obvious that stream snipers would never miss such a perfect opportunity to ruin everything. This might actually be the biggest mistake the main hero has made in all his streams. The people who were supposed to assist him immediately aimed their weapons at him. For them, this had become personal because they simply could not watch some random rookie conquer every peak in the game. In their minds, he should respect the veterans who played before him, but that respect never came. That is exactly why, instead of helping, they chose to challenge him. Ken quickly realized the mistake and decided not to waste even a second on them. He ignored those slime balls completely and sprinted straight into the boss chamber, determined to finish the mission alone. In the Arbiter's audience hall, a heavy oppressive atmosphere could be felt immediately. Sitting right before the hero was the massive Arbiter, and also Elisha's father. All this time he had remained silent, as if he simply ignored the entire world crisis. The moment he saw his daughter, he burst into laughter like a mad old man. Someone should probably hand him a pill and send him to a retirement home if he refuses to fight evil. The Arbiter kept repeating nonsense, claiming that his silence was meant to protect humanity. Then his gaze shifted toward Ghost, and he clearly did not appreciate an outsider standing inside the hall. He made it clear that he would never allow some pathetic humans to disturb his peace. By that point, the situation became even worse when the stream snipers launched their attack. They did not care about the game's ending because they had come here for one reason only: to destroy the main hero. With every circumstance turning against him, the only option left was to fight and hope luck stayed on his side. Ken had defeated stream snipers before, but never in numbers like this. The viewers were too nervous to type in chat and quietly chewed their nails. The Arbiter showed no intention of interfering and calmly watched as humans slaughtered each other. It almost looked like he enjoyed watching the entire circus. Ironically, stream snipers were usually lone wolves, but now facing a common enemy, they suddenly moved like a coordinated team. Ghost could not care less what they thought because he promised his fans that he would finish this game today. He activated his maximum speed and wiped out several enemies in a flash. The battle was nearly over, and right at that moment, the Arbiter finally decided to make his move. Now even the last fragment of Ghost's soul could be shattered into pieces. For the first time, the aura of death made him realize that defeat might actually be close. This was the exact loss that all the haters had been praying for. A massive ancient boar rose and revealed its true power. One swing of his sword was enough to smash through a concrete wall. Now it is honestly terrifying to imagine what would happen if Ken took one of those hits. He better show insane flexibility and dodge if he really does not want to end his streaming career. The Arbiter's strike was truly powerful, but speed turned out to be his greatest weakness. If he had been just a little faster, this game would be impossible to beat. Ken instantly focused and realized that no boss is truly unbeatable. The real issue was the stream snipers, who were still a serious problem and refused to disappear. From the outside, it looked like some old grandpa drank way too much wine and remembered the Afghanistan war. The kids begged him to calm down, but he kept shouting that he would kill every Viet Cong soldier. This is exactly what happens when nobody keeps an eye on old men and lets them peacefully lose their minds. The main hero today was clearly in peak condition, and you could see it in every movement. Just pay attention, he was fighting on two fronts at the same time. He was not only eliminating stream snipers but also landing brutal blows on the Arbiter. That is probably why viewers respect his talents so much and eventually forgive all his flaws. Even the haters watching the stream fell silent and simply enjoyed the show. Golden flashes lit up the battlefield, and bursts of fury kept the tension alive. From the outside, it might look easy, but behind it hides ridiculous natural talent. Ken used his magical lasso to redirect enemies straight toward the Arbiter's blade. With that clever trick, he bought himself extra time while keeping the giant entertained. But then Ken made a mistake and casually sat on the mighty throne. That move did not go unnoticed, and the enormous sword instantly came crashing toward his head. It was the perfect moment to activate full Ant-Man mode. Thanks to his smaller size, he moved around the giant with ease. While the Arbiter swung his sword, Ken already had time to dodge, call his friends, and even check the weather. It looked flashy, but the viewers started getting a little bored. The chat demanded that he either finish the fight or die like a proud warrior. Of course, it is easy to sit on a couch and give advice to a streamer. But when it comes to real combat against the Arbiter, only a few people could stand upright without collapsing in fear. To make things worse, the giant suddenly entered a strange berserk state and ignited in crimson flames. The atmosphere grew heavier, and for a moment it even looked like Ken turned slightly pale. Breathing became difficult, yet that confident smile never disappeared. It was a clear sign that the final phase of the long battle had arrived. The ultimate strike of the dragon blade pierced straight through the core of the soul. The enraged giant tried to say his final words, but Ghost had already prepared the sentence of death for him. The next strike only made the giant's defeat even worse. The chat exploded with positive reactions, but that was where the good news ended. The system suddenly issued an overload warning and announced that the stream would shut down immediately. The manager apologized for the malfunction and promised the problem would be fixed as soon as possible. Something like this had never happened before, so everyone demanded answers. Park promised to investigate the situation even though he had never been some kind of tech wizard. Honestly, it did not require a special degree to understand what had happened. The divine technique allows Ghost to stay one step ahead of everyone, but even that power has its downside. The virtual capsule simply cannot handle such pressure, and overload becomes only a matter of time. They would have to contact the developers and demand some real explanation. Ignoring the issue was not an option because the stream could collapse during the most intense moment. Before ending the call, Park warned Ken not to push himself and to rest as much as possible. This is not someone you want to joke around with because his methods of discipline can be quite frightening. For the first time in months, Ken simply lay on the couch thinking about everything that had happened. He had already gotten used to being busy and now felt a strange discomfort. He constantly wanted to jump up and destroy something like Bruce Banner trying to hold the Hulk inside. It was the perfect moment to realize that he had truly become a full-fledged streamer. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of Reality Company, serious discussions were taking place. They analyzed Ken's performance data and realized that their capsule simply could not withstand that level of pressure. If these problems continued, most virtual reality fans would abandon their capsules completely. They urgently needed a new capsule, otherwise the advertising campaign would turn into a disaster. At the same time, it created the perfect opportunity to promote a new product on the stream of one of the most popular streamers today. In the minds of the executives, a brilliant idea appeared immediately. They would build an upgraded capsule and give it to Ken completely free. In return, he would simply promote their product, and both sides would be satisfied. Now all that remained was to approach Ken with a suitcase full of money. Ghost, together with his team, immediately agreed to the meeting. The representative from Reality started telling smooth stories about how Ken's performance would now stay stable like never before. In short, he activated the classic online success course salesman mode. His method worked because Ken had already felt that his divine power was slowly slipping out of control. If the new capsule could help him keep that power in check, then making a little advertisement sounded like a fair deal. They quickly reached an agreement, and now only the promotional integration remained. For that purpose, Ghost received a special mask so he would not reveal his real face. Judging by the situation, the mask they gave him was definitely not the best choice, but let's not focus on that. Let's just pretend nobody noticed that it does not really look like the real Ken. There is absolutely no point in describing the entire advertising campaign in every little detail. All those flashy slogans and loud statements along with promises of improved gameplay sounded way too scripted. Even though Ken improved his acting skills, he is still light years away from winning an Oscar. Still, he eventually received his free capsule, and now he no longer has to worry about overload. The viewers were also tired of hearing corporate speeches and demanded he immediately jump back into battle and start chopping off someone's limbs. This guy never needs to be asked twice because he is always ready to dive into the game. Now we return to the medieval world where a sword matters far more than the number of Instagram followers. Ghost had just defeated the massive Arbiter, and Alicia immediately stepped out from hiding. She rushed toward her father and listened to his confession. He kept repeating that he was not guilty and that he only wanted to do what was right. That excuse sounded strangely familiar, almost like something politicians say during speeches. Soon his soul passed into Ken's hands, marking yet another victory. The next Arbiter would be the giant's daughter, who would inherit all of his abilities. Now she had the power to search for the soul of the legendary knight Eldon. She thanked Ken for helping her create a new body and destroying the golem that had been bound to her soul. Now Ken must travel to meet the legendary knight and finish what was started long ago. A golden portal opened before him, glowing like it was inviting him inside. A bright flash made it clear that the portal would not wait forever. One step forward was enough to arrive in a forgotten place abandoned by the gods. Cold emptiness surrounded everything, and not even the wind dared to move. Then beside him appeared the great knight Eldon, shining in his golden armor. He stepped forward and touched Ken's heart, revealing that their fates were forever connected. The power of the legendary knight's soul flowed into the savior of humanity. Everyone who carried fragments of his soul had become shattered warriors. Ken understood nothing, so the world allowed him to witness the past again. Thousands of memories merged together, revealing the true history of this world. Endless war had always brought countless victims. People lost their loved ones and suffered without hope of victory. Sometimes it even felt like the war had lasted so long that the monsters themselves had grown tired of it. The defenders of humanity had to act, or they would betray everything they believed in. People did not need victory, they simply wanted to survive. The mission of the final savior was to protect the fragile peace of this world. It was Eldon who transformed the fallen knight into the graveyard undertaker. He continued his journey, doing everything possible to fulfill his destiny. When he reached the graveyard, he shattered himself into countless fragments along with his pure soul. All of this was necessary to preserve the balance of the world. After dozens of years, not many managed to survive. The Arbiter watched everything unfolding and kept asking himself what would happen if every piece of the soul that death had corrupted was cut away. He was far from certain that after that a human would still remain human. After long contemplation, he decided to entrust the mission to the only person who had not yet been corrupted by this world. At the same time, he never forgot that he had to protect his little daughter who had barely been born into this world. In an unstable world, Alicia constantly risked her life, and her father simply wanted to fix that. The only problem was that the way he chose to guarantee her safety was extremely unconventional. Instead of protecting his daughter himself, the old man simply sent her to an altar that no one could ever leave. And at the same time, he convinced himself that it was necessary for the salvation of humanity. The people who came begging for help heard nothing but silence. The old man looked like someone who had put in AirPods and cranked the volume to the max. The world was falling apart, and he could not care less. The only thing on his mind was the rising price of a Spotify subscription. In the end, humanity was not saved, and Aiden's plan collapsed like a house of cards. But now humanity gained a new chance thanks to a guy known as Ghost. Now Ken himself had the power to recreate a world where monsters and disasters would no longer exist. The subscribers watching the channel did not fully understand what was happening, but they simply could not look away from their screens. It felt like Ken was about to kickstart a brand new era for humanity in this medieval world. After hearing the entire story, Ken added that every monster is still human at the core. That meant the era of humanity had never truly disappeared, and all it needed were a few adjustments. He would continue this world and bring justice back to the lives of ordinary people. Judging by everything, the key to doing that was activating the Dark Rune. Do not even ask what that is, because nobody has the slightest clue. A blinding flash of light changed everything, and the sun began shining over the world once again. Sometime later, Alicia wrote another letter to Ghost. A whole year had passed since his disappearance, and the world was slowly returning to normal. The Dark Rune became the mark of the dead who now helped fight against the creatures of darkness. Humanity slowly but surely started moving toward prosperity. During that time, Alicia realized that only words and actions can save the world, and silence would never solve anything. She kept waiting for Ghost's return, hoping that sooner or later they would meet again. Yeah, that right there is the kind of emotional ending that can make anyone tear up. The creators of the game immediately announced a sequel, hoping to ride the massive wave of success. They even recorded a special video dedicated to the streamer who had completed the game in such an unconventional way. Thanks to that news, Ken started becoming famous even outside of Korea. It still made him a little embarrassed, even though he had already gotten used to popularity. Ken was even promised a special in-game appearance, just like Eclipse had in a similar title. The developers were hoping these guys would team up and conquer the new game together. The game would also feature new NPC characters inspired by the achievements of Ghost. This was a huge success, and now the developers were milking the franchise the same way Disney milks Star Wars. Well, of course, from all sides donations poured in, and Ken even broke the record for earnings in one evening. After that, he returned to reality and was flooded with an enormous number of congratulations. By the way, during that time, the date for a massive event was finally announced, where the best streamers of the modern era would gather. Genome wasted no time and instantly called to congratulate his friend. The new game sequel was already being talked about everywhere, and Ken's name kept popping up in those conversations more and more often. Genome also mentioned that at the upcoming event where the strongest streamers would gather, they would need to form a team. If they wanted to compete at the highest level, then they needed to secure some powerful allies. In the near future, there would be no rest for him because a streamer's schedule hits harder than an Amazon intern during peak season. But even now, when he finally got a small moment of free time, he had no intention of chilling out. Instead of collapsing onto a warm, cozy couch, the guy headed straight to a boxing gym. This place was perfect for finding people who could punch just as hard as the monsters from virtual reality. Ken glanced at the view counter and only after that allowed himself to calmly start smashing the punching bag. Nothing beats throwing on boxing gloves and beating up a bag while imagining Jake Paul standing right in front of you. Ghost's constant training was not random at all. He never forgot the advice from his grandmother, who kept repeating how important physical strength was. Divine energy raged inside his body, and if he stayed weak, he simply would not be able to control it. Back then he was young and never really listened to his grandmother's words, but now everything had changed. As soon as sports entered his life, the negative influence of those divine forces started fading away. Sometimes thoughts about his grandmother made him feel a little heavy inside. If she were still around, she would definitely find the right words and show him the path to the next level. During training, his aunt suddenly called, clearly craving a meeting. Throughout the entire story, she had never even been shown once, even though she was actually a very interesting person. For starters, her name was Yang Gyuri, and she was the successor of the protagonist's grandmother. That meant she was also a shaman and loved talking about astrology cards and all kinds of mystical nonsense. His aunt did not really follow trends, so she had no idea just how big Ken had become as a streamer. She simply wanted to check how he was doing because aside from her, Ken basically had no one left. After hearing the latest updates about his life, she realized that the time had come to move forward. The guy had already learned to control divine power inside virtual reality, but why stop there when he could develop that talent in the real world? It was actually easier than it sounded, although he would have to confront his inner demon. The conversation dragged on for so long that even YouTube would have already inserted an ad break. To make matters worse, the whole discussion was drowning in complicated talk about destiny, responsibility, and power. For a moment, Ken almost felt like he had been dropped straight into Star Wars and was now about to walk the path of a Jedi. Long story short, if he wanted to master this power, his aunt would help him, but it would require sweat, blood, and relentless training. Ken understood that there would be no easy road, and this power would demand payment in sweat and hard work. He even told her about the vision where an unknown god had granted him a special power. His aunt's expression changed instantly, and she declared that he was the chosen one. The crafty shaman promised she would make him happy, but for that he would need to trust her completely. Hard to say if trusting a woman with pink eyes and pink hair is a smart move, but there was no other option. If teaming up with someone who looks like Barbie was the only way forward, then Ken was ready for it. In the end, his aunt reminded him that knowing one's limits was extremely important. No one could help with that because it was a personal path every person had to walk alone. People who carried divine power could look not only into the future but also into the souls of others. If Ken managed to take full control of that power, then his skills in the virtual world would become several times stronger. By the way, young Yuri herself had once been a nobody until an experienced shaman took her under her wing. Back then, Ken had still been a small kid and ended up under her care almost immediately. To her, he was like a little brother, so no matter how strange her behavior looked, she was someone who could be trusted. They said their goodbyes and Ken finally had time to think everything through. A guardian spirit was not supposed to bring suffering, at least that was what the shaman believed. The key was learning to control that power, and instead of problems, it would only bring benefits. It was easy to imagine Ken using those abilities in the real world just as smoothly as he did in the game. In that case, he could become a hero not only in streaming but also in real life. His grandmother, for example, could see the true nature of things and even the souls of the dead. Hard to say how that helped her, but it sounded insanely cool. Now he had to figure out how to use that power outside the game. But for now, it was better to focus on the game because that was the one thing our hero truly dominated. By the way, today Genome and Eclipse had gathered to break down Ghost's combat technique. The moment Ken realized that a hype stream had started without him, he could not hold back and instantly jumped in. Looks like this guy really does not like when other streamers steal all the spotlight. The chat exploded with excitement the second Ghost showed up to greet them. Now everyone was curious about what he would do next and whether he would play the second part of Medieval. Loyal fans already knew that Ken loved switching things up, so chances were high he would jump into a brand new game. But until that happens, there was nothing wrong with having fun and running chaotic collab streams purely for the hype. The warriors exchanged experience and immediately decided it was time to relax. Once money stopped being a problem, real life started feeling like a fantasy story. At any moment they could gather their friends and head to a restaurant just to chill and celebrate. During the conversation, Genome could not resist sharing his thoughts about a new game. By that point, he was already a little drunk, and it was hard to understand what exactly he was mumbling about. Apparently, a new game had dropped where the action takes place aboard a spaceship. Ghost had never been to space before, and maybe it was finally time to fix that. But before that, he needed to decide who would join his team for the upcoming streamer battle. Ken and Genome still had to find 2 more teammates they could truly trust. At first, the format of the event was completely different, but the organizers decided to gather as many predators as possible in one place. The idea sounded cool, but trusting streamers is about as safe as trusting politicians. What they needed were not just talented streamers, but people who were actually comfortable to work with. The team had to be strong and at the same time capable of putting on a real show. Ken came up with an idea, and the very next day he and Genome headed to a local market. Hopefully they were hunting for allies here and not shopping for new dishes. Recently his control over divine power had reached a whole new level, and now Ghost could even sense the strength hidden inside inanimate objects. Nobody had figured out how to monetize that yet, but it definitely looked awesome from the outside. Still, he had to use the power carefully because pushing it too far could wreck his health again. His aunt constantly reminded him that with proper control of divine energy, problems could be forgotten, but that level of mastery demanded serious practice. Their wandering around the shop caught the attention of the owner. At first the man thought they had simply come to the wrong place, but his assistant immediately understood what was going on. A 27-year-old guy stepped out and looked at the visitors with surprise. It was the first time they had met without armor, weapons, or any kind of battle gear. In case someone still had not figured it out, the explanation was simple because today they had come to see Eclipse. The guy loved the medieval world, not only in games but also in real life. Even though he was glad to meet them, he clearly did not understand why they had shown up. Genome switched into straight-to-the-point mode and immediately said it was time to join forces. Very soon the Tournament of Stars would begin, where every team had to assemble its squad. For Eclipse, this was a golden chance to show off his talent, earn serious money, and expand his audience. He did not seem against the idea, but he had one condition. The guy carried a true warrior spirit and wanted to face Ken in an offline fight. That sounded insanely intense, although no one was going to donate money for a fight like that. Even without donations, Ken was ready to take the risk and prove his strength right here and now. Just a single handshake between those two was enough to feel the power flowing through both of them. They immediately headed to a local martial arts center. The fighters there did not follow streaming culture, so there was no risk of someone recording the battle. Now all that was left was to grab the gear and finally see who was truly stronger without masks and without playing for the audience. As for the equipment, the selection here is seriously massive. It almost looks like Eclipse broke into a local museum and looted the entire place. Compared to that level of dedication, even Genome starts looking like a little kid who barely knows what he is doing. The guys strapped on their armor and stepped onto the arena, ready to start the fight. It was hard to predict how this would end because until now, Ken had only fought against pixels. He remembered his aunt's advice about controlling his own body, but the real question was whether that was enough to take a huge leap forward right away. Personally, there were serious doubts that the guy could handle it, so calling the police in advance might not be the worst idea before Eclipse accidentally finishes him. Our hero, of course, kept acting like a carefree kid who had no clue how dangerous the situation really was. Sooner or later, that attitude could turn into a nasty trap, and even his aunt would not be able to help him then. The battle began, and Eclipse, hungry for victory, rushed forward immediately. With his experience and burning desire for revenge, he clearly had the edge. While Genome tried to calm his racing heart, Ken focused on defending with everything he had. But after just a few seconds, Ken began reading the attacks and managed to hold the line. He found himself in a tough position very quickly, yet still walked out of it with his head held high. After blocking several strikes, Ghost finally began to counterattack. So far, he controlled his power perfectly and felt no weakness at all. The guy maintained a flawless balance and fought as if the entire situation was just another game. He had deliberately worn less armor so he could stay light and flexible. Meanwhile, Eclipse kept charging forward like a tank, just like his idol The Rock. Instead of a chat window, there was a real crowd watching around the arena made up of fighters who trained in this gym. The atmosphere felt nothing like the typical stream our hero was used to. To avoid seriously hurting Eclipse, Ken struck him with the flat side of the sword, but even that was enough to make a loud ringing explode inside his head. The victory came a little too easily and a little too confidently. Even this time, Eclipse showed true warrior spirit and honestly admitted his defeat. As for the spectators, they were more than satisfied because they had not seen an action scene like that in a long time. Watching that fight even sparked the urge to train a little personally. If someone had invited me there, I would have thrown everyone around easily, but staying on a warm couch still sounds like the better option. Ken fulfilled the request, and now Eclipse officially joined their team. The third member was secured, but the question remained who would become the fourth. Eclipse had been on the radar from the very beginning, since they had even done streams together before. Now they would have to seriously brainstorm to find the final missing piece of the squad. One idea would be to not overthink it and just invite Epstein, so at least the whole thing would be entertaining. At the same time, the event organizers were finishing their preparations. At first there were problems with ticket sales, but new information had just arrived. Eclipse was joining the team of Ken and Genome, and the marketing department was already counting the profits. A man who had spent a decade playing medieval games suddenly choosing a new format was a huge sensation. That kind of hype demanded an extra advertising campaign so that all of Korea would know the heat was coming. Now the company manager needed to push Ken and his friends to invite one more superstar into their team and smash through the ceiling of the ratings. After spending time in the real world, it is always important to return to the subscribers before they forget about you. Ken greeted his viewers and announced that he had already chosen a brand new game for himself. He warmed up the audience in classic style, like someone trying to sell a crypto income course. Everyone was curious about what could possibly be special about a spaceship that collapsed faster than a failed startup. Now Ken stepped into the role of an explorer in a distant space colony searching for a new home for humanity. An unexpected collision with an asteroid shattered the ship and awakened the people sleeping inside their capsules. After the explosion, only a single escape capsule remained accessible, and someone had to find it. The competition was brutal because everyone wanted to survive and escape this nightmare. Everything seemed fine except for the tight latex suit that pressed in all the wrong places. But let us pretend nobody noticed that detail and keep watching how the story unfolds. A book lay on the floor, but it was definitely not the next part of Harry Potter. It turned out to be another manual explaining how to move around the ship and unlock its doors. So far, everything felt a little too easy when what everyone really wanted were battles and blood. The system suddenly leveled the playing field, and Ghost nearly collapsed from dizziness. The effect came from the strange conditions of space that the body had to adjust to. Slowly dragging his legs, Ken moved forward while scanning everything around him. Soon he found a door with a 6-digit panel that even Ocean's crew would struggle to crack. His blurred vision made it difficult to focus, and his knees kept threatening to buckle. If the developers had chosen a truly complicated code, nobody would even pass the first mission, which meant the answer had to be much simpler than it seemed. All that was needed was intuition and a bit of divine power, and the solution would reveal itself instantly. Now that was what real cheating looked like, without even searching for extra codes online. One random guess from Ken, while someone else probably spent 3 years programming the system. At this point, someone really needed to drag Ken out of the virtual world and recruit him into a business crew, because that kind of strategy actually works. Entering the next room, he discovered additional cards required to launch the escape capsules. Finally, he reached the capsule chamber and realized there was almost no time left. On top of that, the first competitor appeared already sniffing around like a hunting dog. The guy was not stupid either and wanted to escape this place as quickly as possible. But breaking the password was far from easy. While that player built complicated theories inside his head, Ken trusted his instinct. Ken glanced at the cards in his hand, entered a combination, and the panel instantly flashed green. That was the difference between someone wasting time and someone acting without hesitation. The spaceship exploded and only a single capsule managed to survive. Everything seemed clear now, and the game actually looked pretty interesting. Even the developers congratulated the new star for such a smooth start. Ghost collected the donations and promised that he would definitely return for the second mission soon. But for now, he had to prepare for the upcoming event where the real predators of the streaming world would gather. The subscribers were hyped while the editor kept chugging coffee just to stay awake under the mountain of work. The poor guy had been dreaming about a vacation for ages, but deep down everyone knew that day would never come. Even Genome started reviewing Ghost's streams as if he were just another fan instead of a fellow streamer. The subscribers were already flooding the chat with questions, trying to figure out when the big star event would finally begin. Ken even watched part of the stream and completely forgot to open the gift box from Escape. And that box actually contained some pretty interesting stuff. For example, a cover with beautiful girls and a coupon for attending a fan meet event. The catch was that out of the 3 tickets, only one was real. Ken had to use his divine power and guess the correct ticket. At first, he started mumbling that divine power probably would not help in a situation like this. But he still had to try because Manager Park was a massive fan of those girls. Turns out divine power could handle even something like that. It became the perfect gift for the manager, but he refused to go alone. He started persuading Ken to come along, otherwise he claimed it would be the end of him. As for Ben, nobody even invited him because last time that big guy devoured all the donuts and the crew almost got kicked out of a movie premiere. Ghost eventually agreed, although he still made sure to hide his face. At this rate, he would probably never find himself a girlfriend, although maybe he did not even need one. Why bother with a girlfriend when there were subscribers ready to donate every single second? So they arrived at the event and looked around. There were tons of people because fan meetings with stars did not happen every day. At first, Ken was not interested at all, but then he noticed the shining princesses on stage, and suddenly the guy started drifting toward them like a school kid at an Idol concert. That was exactly what happened to men when they spotted real beauties. The manager looked like the happiest person alive, and Ken did not want to ruin his moment. That lasted right up until he felt a familiar energy. After writing a short note, he stepped forward to get an autograph. His attention was drawn to Nara because he knew who she truly was. At first glance, she looked like a fragile and defenseless beauty. In reality, at night, she put on the Newton suit and destroyed her rivals inside video games. When she saw the secret note, she trembled like a soaked kitten. On the other side was an invitation to meet and talk, and maybe even more than just talk. Forgive the silly jokes, but sometimes they just slip out. Nara managed to control her emotions and calmly agreed to the meeting. The manager left the event extremely satisfied and thanked his friend many times for the company. Things were also lining up perfectly for Ken because Nara revealed a completely unexpected side of herself. He had assumed she would be just as ruthless as in virtual reality, but now it was obvious that was not the case. After the fan meeting, the girl looked noticeably nervous because her identity had been exposed. Everything had been fine until Ken appeared with his ridiculous invitation to meet. Since he wanted to meet inside virtual reality, there was no reason not to take the risk because Nara really had nothing to lose. Once they returned home, they climbed into their capsules and met in a neutral zone. Honestly, a third round of their showdown would have been amazing to watch, but it looked like tonight there would be no battle. Ken made it clear from the start that he had a specific proposal, which was exactly why he initiated the conversation. He invited her to join his team as if they were old friends meeting again after years apart. A collaboration like this benefits everyone involved, so there was really no reason to hold back. Still, convincing Nara would not be easy. She hated the idea of teaming up with her enemies, but what if she could be convinced that they were actually fighting on the same side? It was time for her to step out of the shadows and show the world that Newton could do more than just hunt talented streamers and sabotage them. Nara feared for the image she had built because it had taken years to shape. Once upon a time, she was poor and completely ignored by everyone around her without any visible talent. Those were the years when she realized that relentless effort mattered far more than natural ability. The girl began to hate gifted geniuses who seemed to succeed effortlessly. She deliberately hunted them down and destroyed them without realizing that such a path would never bring real success. If she wanted to make a name for herself and represent discipline and hard work, she had to change her strategy. The upcoming event would be the perfect chance to prove that Newton was first and foremost a powerful streamer and not just the villain everyone despised. At first, she disliked Ghost because of his overwhelming confidence. But when Ken explained his difficult past and the long road filled with failures, the story slowly changed her perspective. The negotiations ended successfully, which meant they were now on the same side and a true spectacle was about to unfold. It was almost scary to imagine what their opponents would face when confronting a team like this. In the end, Nara tried to find out how he had discovered her true identity, but she never received an answer. The conversation ended on a positive note, and now all that remained was to wait for the event, wherein one team would stand Ghost, Newton, Genome, and Eclipse. When Ken mentioned Newton's name, the room went silent for a moment. They all knew Ken had the talent to persuade almost anyone, but Newton had never even crossed their minds. After all, the viewers were expecting a famous streamer, not a hated stream sniper. Ken promised that everything would go smoothly and that Nara would not cause unnecessary trouble. Everyone seemed satisfied, and now the real show could begin. When Nara arrived at the meeting, every guy in the room suddenly felt their throat go dry. A girl that stunning was not someone to joke around with unless someone wanted to get burned badly. She promised to work as part of the team even though she had never experienced teamwork before. Honestly, the situation almost sounded like the beginning of a questionable anime plot. 3 guys, 1 girl, and a line about teamwork. The imagination could already guess where that might go, but it was better to wait for the event itself. 25 teams had gathered for the tournament, each consisting of 4 players. The audience had already labeled it the Battle of Legends, and people were even taking time off work to watch it. Viewers had already chosen their favorite broadcasts and were discussing the tournament long before it even began. The presentation of Perfect Team was as impressive as ever. Many fans only now discovered that the Master of Gravity had joined their squad. Genome personally introduced Newton and promised that today they would absolutely claim first place. The tournament organizers quickly handed out protective gear while the fans practically drooled seeing their favorite heroes dressed in such epic battle outfits.